starting from Douluo, shocking all the worlds. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction. So please don't attempt real magic, the results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Period. Chapter 201 Strong Tang San. Grandpa, why are you here? Looking behind Tian Yuo, Tai Long's face was full of surprises. But when Tian Yuo saw this, his eyes widened immediately, and he said angrily, "You bastard, why did I ask you to apologize, and you actually used your grandpa to scare me again? Are you afraid of me because your grandpa is here? I tell you," snapped. In the end, before Tian Yuo could finish speaking, accompanied by the howling wind, a huge slap like a bear's paw slapped him hard on the head in no time. With a slap, Tian Yuo was almost beaten. But when he turned his head and wanted to yell at the person who beat him, a familiar face came into view, which made him tremble suddenly. Looking at the person in front of him, Tian Yuo didn't look as fierce as before, he was just a docile sheep. He said with embarrassment, "Dad, why are you here?" Appearing in front of Tian Yuo and Tai Long at this moment is an old man with white beard and hair. His figure is extremely strong, and his deep eyes give people a feeling of power without anger. He is Tino's father Titan. Hearing his son's question, Titan stared at him, and said, "What? You father and son are allowed to come, but I am not allowed? Or do you want to overthrow Lao Tzu and take the position yourself? Dad, what are you talking about? How dare your son do such a rebellious thing? Tai Long, is your father like me?" Tian Yuo hurriedly said. Then he kept gesturing to Tai Long with warning eyes, which meant if you dare to say a wrong word, your third leg will be broken. Tai Long pouted, although he was very reluctant, he still testified for Tian Yuo. "Grandpa, Dad is definitely not such a person, it's not good." A satisfied expression appeared on Titan's face. But immediately he frowned, looked at both Tian Yuo and Tai Long with wounded faces, and asked, "What's going on with you? Were you beaten?" No," snapped. Titan slapped Tian Yuo on the head again, because he was the one who said no just now. Seeing this, Tai Long felt extremely comfortable. Snort. "You used to hit me on the head all the time, but now it's alright, and finally enjoy the treatment of being hit on the head by your father." Then he immediately told the whole process of his father avenging himself and being beaten after he was beaten. After Titan listened, surprise flashed in his deep eyes. Even Tian Yuo, who has the cultivation base of the Soul King, is no match. Could it be that the student from Shrek Academy named Tang Ge has a higher cultivation base than the Soul King? This can't help but make him a strong interest in the strength department. But before that, Titan still couldn't hold back the anger in his heart, and suddenly raised his hand and slapped his son hard. Suddenly, Tylenol's face, which was about to subside, swelled up again. He couldn't help but hold the face that was beaten, looked at Titan aggrievedly, and said, "Dad, isn't Tai Long finished? Why are you still hitting me? I beat you lightly." A person in his 50s and, can't even beat a little guy, and he still loses in his best field. "It's really embarrassing to my family," Titan shouted immediately. On the side, Tai Long hurriedly ran behind Titan, and while helping Titan beat his back, he said, "Grandpa, calm down. Grandson doesn't want you to be so angry that your body is ruined. Well, my grandson is the best. Let's go, grandson, take me to meet your amazing classmate." Hearing Tai Long's words, Titan was very satisfied. However, his decision made Tai Long couldn't help but said with some worry, "Grandpa, I can take you to meet my classmate, but you can't hurt him. No matter what, we are all in the same academy, and fighting are common. Don't worry, your grandpa and I will act appropriately." Titan nodded. Immediately, the two of them walked towards Shrek Academy together, without greeting Tian Yuo at all, as if they had forgotten about this person. For a moment, Tian Yuo's red and swollen face was distorted with anger. "You son of a bitch, I've been so kind to you for nothing, yet I don't even talk to your dad in front of your grandpa. I'm so mad." When the three of Titan's family rushed towards Shrek Academy aggressively, Tang San and Xiao Wu, who had just left the auction, were also returning to Shrek Academy. It was a coincidence that they met together. Third brother, don't you think the person in front is Tai Long? The two people next to him look similar to him. Could it be his family? Xiao Wu, who was walking, suddenly stopped, pointed to the three figures on the left who were walking towards this sight and said in surprise. Hearing Xiao Wu's words, Tang San stopped and looked over. Sure enough, he saw Tai Long, who was beaten up by Tang Ge in the classroom before, and the other party's face was still bruised. But oddly enough, beside Tai Long, besides the old man with white beard and hair, another middle-aged man who looked very similar to Tai Long also had red and swollen face. Coupled with the menacing looks of the three of them, a bad idea suddenly popped up in Tang San's heart. Could it be that the middle-aged man was also beaten by Tang Ge? Just thinking about it, the three titans from the left had already arrived in front of Tang San and Xiao Wu. But when they were about to miss each other, Tang San suddenly moved 2 steps to the left, immediately blocking the way of the three of them. Among them, Tai Long had actually recognized Tang San and Xiao Wu. In particular, Xiao Wu has been his goal for the past 6 months because of her good looks and good personality. It's just a pity that the other party ignored him at all. As for Tang San, Tai Long didn't know the other party's name at all. But now the other party actually blocked the way, plus the other party was still walking so close to Xiao Wu. Tai Long, who originally didn't want Xiao Wu to see his embarrassing face, suddenly became angry. He couldn't help but angrily said, "Get out of the way, don't be our way, the two seniors are going to find Tang Ge." Tang San ignored Tai Long, but looked at Tai Tan and Tai An Yuo, and asked. Tai An Yuo's face twitched, but he didn't speak. Tai Tan next to him frowned, stared at Tang San with unfriendly eyes, and said, "What? Could it be that you beat my grandson and my son's Tang Ge successively?" It turned out to be so. Hearing Tai Tan's words, Tang San couldn't help secretly wryly smiling. Then he took a deep breath and shook his head. "Senior, I am not Tang Ge, my name is Tang San. If you really want to find Tang Ge, please let me face you, senior, for him." Third brother, what are you? Xiao Wu was very puzzled by Tang San's decision, and couldn't help asking in doubt. Seeing Xiao Wu's bewildered expression, he immediately smiled and said, "Xiao Wu, actually Oscar is right about this matter. The reason why Tang Ge and Tai Long had a conflict was essentially because of you. But since you called me third brother, Xiao Wu, and I promised you that I would protect you no matter what, I can't just sit idly by and ignore this matter. Xiao Wu, I will let you believe that I will definitely protect you." Feeling Tang San's firm eyes, Xiao Wu couldn't help feeling warm, and nodded immediately. "Well, I believe in third brother, ask for a monthly pass." End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 202. Aren't you looking for me? Seeing Tang San and Xiao Wu showing their affection in front of him, Tai Long immediately gritted his teeth angrily. He couldn't help but said viciously, "Tang San, my grandpa is Hercules Titan. Aren't you afraid that my grandpa will slap you to death? I believe that the seniors will not bully the small with the big." Tang San was not afraid, and looked at the white-bearded Tai Tan with a smile on his face. However, he knew very well in his heart that the old man in front of him was probably extremely powerful, and his aura alone made him feel like he was facing a towering mountain range. Tai Tan didn't know what Tang San was thinking, but he admired his kid's actions. He nodded in praise and said, "It's rare and precious courage to stand up for your classmates," but at this point, Tai Tan's tone suddenly changed, and his voice suddenly became indifferent. "Let me ask you again, you were not the one who injured my son and my grandson. You can choose to leave. Are you sure you want to stay and face the old man's anger?" "I'm sure, but I hope that no matter what the result is, this matter will be left alone, and I ask the senior to agree," Tang San said calmly. "Okay, I promise you." At this moment, as a dazzling light burst out from Tai Tan's eyes, an unparalleled sense of power suddenly erupted from him. At the same time, a burning incense also flew out from his sleeve, like a sharp arrow. It was firmly nailed to a wall not far away with a poof. Because of the huge force, cracks like spider webs began to appear on this wall. Seeing this, Tang San's pupils suddenly constricted. Xiao Wu next to her was even more frightened. She couldn't help reaching out her little hand to grab Tang San's sleeve. Her pretty face was full of worry. "Third brother, don't worry, I'll be fine," Tang San interrupted Xiao Wu's words, and said with a gentle smile on his face. But immediately his face returned to normal, and he looked at Tai Tan again. "I don't know what the senior means. What I mean is very simple. During the next 1 stick of incense time, I will not make a move, nor will I release my martial spirit. As long as you can sustain the pressure from me until the incense burns out, even if you win, the matter of your classmates bullying my son and my grandson will be wiped out. Titan said these words very calmly. But whether it was Tai Long or Tang Hao who heard it later, their faces turned red with embarrassment, and they couldn't help lowering their heads. I was beaten, and in the end, my elders had to stand up for me. It was really embarrassing. Xiao Wu, who had retreated from behind, snorted even more dissatisfied. Tang San didn't reject Tai Tan's proposal, but asked, then what if I lose? If you lose, join our power clan for your classmate, Titan said lightly. The boy in front of him can always remain calm in front of him, and his whole body has a solid breath, which is obviously very talented. If he could let the other party join his family, it would be a worthwhile trip for him this time. But Tang San directly shook his head and refused at this time. Senior's proposal is not fair. What kind of unfair law? Titan frowned. Tang San was not afraid, said, Senior, since it's a bet, it must be fair. If I lose, I can join your family. But if the senior loses, I think the senior should also join my family? After saying these words, Titan couldn't help but burst out laughing. Ha ha ha. Let this old man join your family? You really dare to think about it, kid? But it's a pity that the old man will not agree. If you win, let my son and grandson join your family. It's just, does your kid have a family? Tang San also showed a smile on his face. Facing Titan's inquiry, he said confidently, of course I have a family, and its name is Tang Sect, Tangman? Could it be that some unknown small family failed? Titan, who stopped laughing, couldn't help thinking puzzledly after hearing Tang San say his family name. But then he stopped thinking about it, and said lightly, since you have already agreed, then I will stop talking nonsense, and everyone who has nothing to do with it should retreat. If you can't hold on while I'm applying pressure, just back off 20 meters or fall to the ground, and I'll stop. Okay, senior, please take action. Saying that, Tang San released his martial spirit directly, and at the same time the level 37 spirit power also formed layers of protective layers to cover his whole body. And Tai Hao and Tai Long continued to retreat as required, and they did not stop until 5 or 60 meters away. As for Xiao Wu, after stepping back 5 or 60 meters, when she saw Tang San's upright body suddenly sinking, her eyes were filled with worry. No. I can't let the third brother face this matter alone. I have to go to Teacher Zhao and the others. Thinking of this, Xiao Wu turned around and quickly ran towards Shrek Academy. As for Xiao Wu's departure, Tang San didn't notice at all. Because at this moment, as the aura unleashed by Titan continued to rise, his whole mind had already been devoted to fighting against this pressure. With 60.00% momentum, Tang San's whole body made the sound of creak and creak when the bones were forcibly pressed. At 70.00% aura, he had to release the Wuhan blue silver grass to form a series of vines to completely envelop him, using special means to continuously resist the powerful pressure on him. It's just that this method didn't play a big role. Under the oppression of the aura formed by the pure strength of the Soul Master's spirit, all Tang San's methods seemed to be useless. Even in the end, when the momentum released by the Titan reached, %, his external spirit bone 8 spider lances was forced out. At this moment, Tang San's consciousness was almost in a coma, only unconsciousness remained to resist. But the Titans who witnessed this scene were more and more pleasantly surprised. He has never seen a Soul Master who is only in his 30s at a young age who can block the oppression of his, % momentum. No. No matter what, he must defeat this little guy and receive him into his family. It's rare to meet a pleasing little guy with excellent talent and a soul bone. Titan even used, % of his aura directly regardless of face. Wong. Ripples visible to the naked eye could be faintly seen in the space, and Tang San, who was already struggling to withstand the shock, reached his limit in an instant. At the moment when he was about to fall down, Tang San spurted out a mouthful of blood, and the consciousness that was originally in a coma woke up instantly. Thinking that Tang Ge could beat even the titled Douluo, but he couldn't even stop the aura of the senior in front of him, he suddenly became extremely unwilling. Do not. Absolutely can't just admit defeat like this. Finally, a flash of determination flashed in Tang San's eyes. And as the blue-silver grass retracted, a black hammer suddenly emerged from his left hand. As soon as the hammer came out, Titan, who happened to see this scene, was so frightened that he almost bit his own tongue, and became a little dazed. This hammer, could it be? But at this moment, Accompanied by the sound of piercing through the air, a calm voice suddenly came from a distance. Senior, didn't you want to find me? Now, here I am, end of this chapter. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203 Covering the Sky with One Hand, So Is the Titan. When he saw the small black hammer emerging from Tang San's left hand, Titan was too shocked to back up a few steps, and the aura he released instantly weakened a lot. But he didn't pay attention to these at all, but stared at the hammer all the time, and his strong body trembled slightly. At this moment, not only Titan was shocked, but even Tian Yuo, who was tens of meters away, was in disbelief. But Tang San didn't notice this at all. He just blocked the remaining pressure with a hammer in his hand after he felt the momentum surrounding him suddenly weaken. At the same time, along with the calm voice just now, a milky white light instantly descended from the sky. When Tang San was enveloped by this milky white beam of light, his originally pale face quickly returned to rosy, and the injuries in his body also quickly recovered. Call out. The sound of piercing the air came, and three figures appeared behind Tang San. One of them was Xiao Wu, who had left before. Seeing Tang San, she immediately worried. Third brother, are you alright? Xiao Wu, you're here. I'm fine. A gentle smile appeared on Tang San's face. But because he was still resisting the aura released by the Titan at this moment, he couldn't move his body for the time being, so after talking to Xiao Wu, he looked at Tang Ge and Zhao Wuji, who came after him. It was Tang Ge who released the opalescent beam of light just now. Although Tang San was very complicated in his heart, he still said something to Tang Ge. Thank you, Tang Ge, thank you, thank you. After all, this incident was caused by me, but you were implicated, Tang Ge said with a smile. But this incident really surprised him. He thought that with his intervention, Tang San would no longer meet Titan. Unexpectedly, in the end, the plot returned to its original trajectory. Perhaps this is the power of a man after being jealous. Just as he was thinking, Xiao Waoqi at the side clasped his fists and opened his mouth to Titan. Grandpa, children don't move or speak. I hope you will forgive me. Don't be as knowledgeable as them. Hearing Zhao Wuji's words, Titan finally recovered from the shock just now. Just at this time, that stick of incense was completely burned out. So he glanced at Tang San, suppressed an impulse in his heart and nodded, saying, well, since that's the case, this bet is considered a draw. As soon as the words fell, the terrifying aura that had enveloped Tang San was immediately taken back by Titan. With all the oppressive power gone, Tang San only felt extremely relaxed. He couldn't help heaving a sigh of relief, and the small hammer in his hand was also put away. But Tang San was still very puzzled about Titan's decision. The others also stared blankly at the very calm Titan. Among them, Tai Long was most puzzled. When did Grandpa become so talkative? He wanted to ask his father, but when his father glared at him fiercely, he was so frightened that he shut his mouth obediently. At this time, Zhao Wuji also reacted immediately, urging Tang San. Little San, what are you doing in a daze? Why don't you hurry up and thank Senior Titan for his mercy? Thank you, Senior. Tang San took a deep breath, immediately cupped his fists and bowed to Titan. In the end, his behavior startled Titan. He quickly walked over and supported Tang San with his hands. Don't dare. Don't dare, Tang San. This kind of behavior of the other party confused him all at once. What do you mean? On the other hand, Zhao Wuji, who was behind, thought of the hammer that Tang San used just now, and guessed in his heart, he couldn't help showing a smile on his face. But at this moment, Tang Ge, who was standing next to him, suddenly raised his foot and took 2 steps forward. His eyes fell on Titan, and said, Senior, I beat your son and your grandson, so I should be the person you are looking for. As soon as these words came out, Zhao Waoqi, who was relieved just now, suddenly coughed violently. He looked at Tang Ge, completely speechless. What is this kid doing now by saying this? Isn't this tearing down the steps of others? Finished. It is estimated that there will be another battle. It's just that despite thinking this way, Zhao Waoqi not only did it worry, but also had some expectations as predicted. When hearing Tang Ge's words, Titan, who had just stopped Tang San, suddenly turned ugly. He looked at Tang Ge, and said in a gloomy voice, What? Do you think the old man is too easy to talk to? Or, do you think if you beat my son and grandson, you can beat me again? Facing Tai Tan's question, Tang Ge smiled and shook his head. I don't know if Senior speaks well or not, but if I have the opportunity to beat up Senior, I'd still like to cherish it very much. Hiss. As soon as these words came out, Tang San and the others who knew Tang Ge well didn't think there was anything wrong, but Tai Long and Tai Yuo couldn't help gasping. They looked at Tang Ge with disbelief in their eyes. Even dare to fight a Contra-level Hercules Titan? Is this kid crazy? Or is he calling us useless in disguise? As for Titan, as Tang Ge's words fell, a pair of tiger eyes stared suddenly, and an aura far more terrifying than the pressure on Tang San just now erupted from him. Behind him, an imaginary powerful orangutan could be faintly seen, beating his chest while roaring silently. At this moment, Titan was completely enraged, and he laughed so loudly. Good. Good. It's been a long time since such a young soul master dared to talk to me like this. Your name is Tang Ge, right? Since you want to beat the old man so much, it depends on your ability. As long as you can catch me without falling, I, Titan, stand here today and let you strike. When the words fell, regardless of whether Tang Ge agreed or disagreed, he suddenly mobilized his Contra-level soul power to cover his right hand and patted Tang Ge heavily. Terrifying power was released, and the space was squeezed with a poof sound. But facing Titan's palm, Tang Ge didn't have the slightest fear. He can beat title Douluo, let alone just a mere Contra. And the other party actually dared to compete with him in terms of strength? Isn't this humiliating? So Tang Ge also laughed out loud at this moment, and his right arm, which had been hanging down on one side, suddenly lifted up. As he clenched his hands into a fist and blasted out, the space around him became even more distorted to the extreme. Immediately afterwards, the attacks of the two collided fiercely together. Boom, boom, boom. Under the interaction of extreme forces, bursts of loud noises like thunder resounded instantly within a radius of, meters. Caught off guard, Zhao Waoqi, Tang San and Tai Yuo's ears hurt from the shock, and they had to cover their ears quickly. But when they looked at the past again, they saw a scene that shocked them. During the violent impact, Tang Ge still stood firmly on the spot with a smile on his face. But the Hercules Titan flew upside down like a kite with a broken string. Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Chapter 204. The overly attentive Ningfengzi. Boom. The Titan that flew upside down slammed into a big tree in the distance, and with a click, the whole tree broke and fell to the ground. Immediately, he backed up another 7 or 8 steps one after another, leaving footprints full of cracks on the ground before finally stopping. The pain and numbness in his arm filled Titan with shock. He looked at Tang Ge, who was always smiling in the distance, and couldn't believe how the other party could have such terrifying power at such a young age. You must know that the Power Clan is famous for its strength, and if you fight for strength alone, there is no soul master at the same level who is an opponent of the Power Clan. But now, as the patriarch of the Power Clan, Titan, who had a Contra cultivation base, lost her teenage boy with just one move when using his martial soul. While this dealt a huge blow to Titan, it was also difficult to accept such a result. He couldn't help trembling and said, "Little, what is your strength? Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked the Titan, and got, shock points, ding dong, congratulations to the host, for shocking Zhao Waoqi, gaining, shock points." Listening to the system prompts that kept ringing in my mind, the shock value was getting closer and closer to 20. Tang Ge felt that he could still work hard. So facing Titan's question, he suddenly smiled and shook his head. Don't care about my strength, senior, you just need to know that compared to the real Titan in the Stardow Forest, you are still far behind. Titans in the Stardow Forest? Titan was taken aback for a moment, and then couldn't help but gasped. This time when he looked at Tang Ge again, he was not only shocked, but full of horror. At some point, Tian Yuo, who had reacted, had already run in front of Titan. He didn't understand Tang Ge's meaning, but seeing Titan's frightened appearance, he was very worried. "Dad, are you alright?" "I am fine." After a while, Titan took a deep breath to recover. After he replied to Tian Yuo with a slightly hoarse voice, he cupped his fists at Tang Ge with a bitter face. "I lost, it's up to you to fight or kill." Hearing what Titan said, Tang Ge was about to say something. Zhao Waoqi, who was standing behind, reacted and hurried forward a few steps to speak first. If the old man didn't let the water go on purpose, how could Tang Ge have won you? The old man is worthy of being the patriarch of the Lizzie clan. He is really righteous. Tang Ge, you don't understand how to respect the old and love the young? Do you really want to hit the old man? Having said that, he quickly winked at Tang Ge again. Seeing this, Tang Ge couldn't help rolling his eyes. The shock value is all in hand. He is not free. Why should he beat someone again? Think too much? So under Zhao Wuji's winking, Tang Ge smiled and put a step on the opposite Titan, said, Senior Gao Yi, this junior really admires him. If there is nothing else, then this junior will leave first. Speaking of me, regardless of whether the other party agrees or not, he turned around and left here. After all, I have to help the teacher look after the college and, so I can't delay work. As for Titan, his old face was flushed with embarrassment at this moment. On the contrary, with Tang Ge's departure, the pressure on him gradually receded, and he would not stop him. Witnessing this scene, Zhao Wuqi felt extremely refreshed in his heart. This old man is used to being arrogant and unreasonable. Now that he finally saw him deflated in front of the students of his academy, he must restrain himself in the future. But on the surface, Zhao Wuqi was still polite, smiling and inviting. If the old man is not busy at the moment, you can go to our college for a while. Well, thank you, Mr. Zhao. Hearing Zhao Wuqi's invitation, Titan originally wanted to refuse. But when he saw Tang San not far away, he immediately changed his mind, nodded and agreed. Immediately, under the leadership of Zhao Wuji, the Titan family left here together with Tang San and Zhao Wu, and went to Shrek Academy. It's just that not long after these people left, along with a puff of black smoke, 3 figures descended from the sky and appeared here. One of them was Ning Rongrong, who had already returned home. And beside her, accompanying her were her father Ning Fengzi and Douluo Gurong. The black smoke just now was released by Douluo. Now that it landed on the ground, seeing the potholes left on the ground, Ning Fengzi couldn't help frowning, and said, It seems that her previous feeling was correct. There was indeed a not too intense battle here. Uncle Bone, can you judge the strength of both sides? Hearing Ning Fengzi's question, Gurong sensed it slightly, and a look of surprise suddenly appeared on his bony face. I can't judge the other person, but according to the remaining soul power here, one of them is actually that old and stubborn Titan, the patriarch of the power clan. Ning Fengzi was also surprised by Gurong's judgment. But before the two of them continued to discuss the matter of the great battle, Ning Rongrong on the side became impatient. She couldn't help pouting, and urged, Grandpa Gu, Dad, if you don't leave, I won't take you to see Tang Ge. As soon as these words came out, Gurong and Ning Fengzi panicked. Especially Ning Fengzi couldn't help but said anxiously, My dear Rongrong, good daughter, Daddy's future depends entirely on you. You have to think of ways for your daddy. How can there be so much nonsense? Why don't you hurry up? Gurong was more anxious than Ning Fengzi. After he let out a low snort, he raised a cloud of black mist, wrapped himself and the 3 of them off the ground, and flew straight towards Shrek Academy. But after a while, the 3 of them appeared outside the gate of the academy. Seeing that the black mist was about to float in directly, Tang Ge, who was resting on a chair below, saw it, and seemed to have discovered something, and suddenly smiled and said, Senior Bone, who are you looking for in such a hurry? Hearing Tang Ge's voice, the black mist paused in midair. Then the black mist dissipated directly. Gurong inside flashed in the air with Ning Rongrong and Ning Fengzi, and when he reappeared, he was already a few meters away from Tang Ge. Seeing Tang Ge, Ning Rongrong was very happy and was about to run over to talk to Tang Ge. As a result, Ning Fengzi next to her was faster than her, and appeared behind Tang Ge in just a few steps. Then, under Ning Rongrong's astonished expression and Gurong's expression of satisfaction, Ning Fengzi threw away a noble walking stick in his hand. He just put his hands on Tang Ge's shoulders and began to help Tang Ge squeeze his shoulders. While pinching, Ning Fengzi still did not forget to say in a caring tone, I heard from Rongrong that you were taken away by Douluo for half a year. Did he not make things difficult for you during this half year? You don't have to be afraid. Tell your uncle directly if you have any troubles. If Douluo really wronged you, I will let your Grandpa Gu and Grandpa Chenzin help you vent your anger together. Lie here and don't move. Let Uncle Anna help you relax your shoulders. Uncle's technique is something that even Rongrong has never enjoyed before. Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 205 One Door with Double 9 Treasures. Tang Ge, who was lying on the recliner, did not expect Ning Fengzi to make such a strange move suddenly, and he was pushed back by the other party when he wanted to sit up. Feeling the comfort from his shoulders, he was completely dazed. Isn't this guy crazy? Fortunately, because it was past noon at this time, as the students all returned to the academy, the entrance became as quiet as before. So no one saw such an exaggerated scene. Otherwise, if people recognize that the person who is pinching Tang Ge's shoulders is the suzerain of the 7 treasure glazed tile sect, how many eggs will they be able to stuff in their mouths in shock? And at this moment, Ning Rongrong finally came to his senses. Seeing her father's behavior at this moment, her pretty face suddenly turned red, and she couldn't help stamping her feet. Dad, what are you doing? What? Can't Dad squeeze the shoulders of his future son-in-law? Wrong. If you want Dad to tell you, you have to come and beat Tang Ge's legs too. Look, I haven't seen him for half a year. Tang Ge has become thinner, and he looks listless lying on the chair, and he has to make up his body after turning around. Ning Fengzi didn't feel ashamed at all. But after Ning Rongrong heard this, the blush on his face immediately spread to his neck, and even the roots of his ears became rosy red. Tang Ge couldn't help but rolled his eyes. He became listless because of dozing off, and his body is very good. How could he need to replenish his body? But Tang Ge could tell that there must be something wrong with the majestic 7 treasure glazed tile sect suzerain who suddenly squeezed his shoulders so courteously for a junior. So he sat up directly from the reclining chair, turned his head to look at Ning Fengzi behind him, and spoke helplessly. Senior Ning, what's your name, Senior Ning? Call me Uncle Ning. Ning Fengzi immediately interrupted Tang Ge's words and corrected him. Okay. Uncle Ning is Uncle Ning. Anyway, you are older than me. Hearing Ning Fengzi's words, Tang Ge could only nod his head and said, Uncle Ning, if you have something to say, just say it. There's really no need to do that. There's really nothing to say. As a result, when the words came to his lips, Ning Fengzi was too embarrassed to say them. The Bone Douluo standing behind couldn't stand it anymore. He walked over and pushed Ning Fengzi aside, and then said to Tang Ge with a gentle smile on his face. Tang Ge, we heard from Rongrong that you gave him a fairy grass called Douluo Tulip, which can make the 7 treasures glazed pagoda evolve into the 9 treasures glazed tile pagoda. Is this true? That's it. Tang Ge was full of doubts. Bone Douluo didn't understand why Tang Ge asked such a question, but he still nodded. That's it. As a result, as soon as he finished speaking, Tang Ge suddenly stood up from the recliner and walked straight towards Ning Rongrong. Seeing this scene, Bone Douluo and Ning Fengzi were stunned for a moment, and then worried expressions appeared on their faces. They thought Tang Ge was angry. Even Ning Rongrong's frail body couldn't help trembling when she saw Tang Ge walking towards her, and her ruddy pretty face suddenly turned pale. There was a hint of weeping in her voice, and she said, Tang Ge, I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't expect. But before Ning Rongrong finished speaking, a slender finger suddenly touched her lips, stopping her from continuing. Looking at Ning Rongrong, who was dazed and full of timidity, Tang Ge couldn't help but smile suddenly, breaking the original calm expression. He stretched out his hand and pinched the other person's face, teasingly said, Silly girl, haven't I already said it before? Since Douluo Tulip is given to you, you can use it however you want. What's more, according to Senior Tengu, you want to give this beautiful tulip to my dad, right? Hearing Tang Ge's words, Ning Rongrong nodded involuntarily. But then she seemed to think of something, and her pretty face turned red again, and she threw herself into Tang Ge's arms with shame and kept beating his heart lightly. You were so hateful just now. I thought you were angry, and almost scared people to tears, and, that's my father, okay. It's your father, not mine. Tang Ge rubbed Ning Rongrong's hair and said with a smile. And in the back, after Bone Douluo and Ning Fengzi looked at each other, their originally worried hearts were immediately relieved. Ning Fengzi smiled wryly and shook his head. This kid, what a clever ghost. After a while, Ning Rongrong broke free from Tang Ge's embrace with a blushing face, ran to the side, turned around, and began to think wildly. After Tang Ge smiled and looked away from the girl, he looked back at Ning Fengzi, who had walked over with Bone Douluo. Uncle Ning, Douluo Tulip does have the effect of promoting the evolution of martial souls, but whether it can make your 7 treasures glazed tower evolve, you have to try it to know. So you agree with Tang Ge? Even though Ning Fengzi was the suzerain of the 7 treasure glazed tile school, he couldn't help showing the excitement in his heart at this moment. Tang Ge rolled his eyes. It's just a medicinal herb. If Uncle Ning, you would tell this matter as soon as you came, but why do you have to put down your face and pinch the younger generation's shoulders? Really, Uncle Gang Ning's shoulder pinching skill is so good, it made me feel so uncomfortable for the younger generation. I'm afraid I won't be able to enjoy this kind of treatment again in the future. Having said that, he couldn't help showing a look of disappointment on his face. Ning Fengzi, this kid is co-authoring and still wants me, the suzerain, to squeeze his shoulders. But faced with the temptation of Kilo Tulip, Ning Fengzi gritted his teeth and said, as long as my 7 treasures glazed tile pagoda can advance, let alone asking me to pinch your shoulders, even washing your feet and kicking your legs will be fine, okay. That's it, Senior Bone can testify. After Ning Fengzi's words fell, Tang Ge immediately made a decision, and then asked, the fairy grass is at Rongrong's place. When is Uncle Ning going to take it? Ning Fengzi felt that he had dug a big hole for himself, but the words had already been spoken, and it was too late to repent. Fortunately, not many people knew about it, so it gave him a little face. Coupled with the urgency to improve the quality of the martial soul, Ning Fengzi didn't think about it anymore, and directly decided to go back to the 7 treasure glazed tile school to take the fairy grass now. Immediately, the group left the Heaven Dao Imperial City immediately. As a witness, Tang Ge naturally chose to go with him. 4 hours later, in the pagoda-shaped hall of the 7 treasure glazed tile school, 2 titled Douluo, Bone Douluo and Sword Douluo, gathered here. Standing beside them were Tang Ge and Ning Rongrong. At this moment, these 4 people were all focusing on Ning Fengzi, who had been drinking Kilo Tulip for an hour not far away at last. After the medicinal effect was fully exerted, a surging aura suddenly erupted from Ning Fengzi's body. At the same time, his martial soul's 7 treasures glazed pagoda also emerged. But at this moment, the 7 treasures glazed tile pagoda is surrounded by 7 colored rays of light, but a more dazzling 9 colored light. At some point, Ning Rongrong also released her martial spirit 9 treasures glazed tile pagoda. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge couldn't help smiling at the 2 titled Douluo who were extremely excited. Congratulations! Now the 7 treasure glazed tile school is a double 9 treasure school. Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Chapter 206. I will leave it all to you from now on. Hearing Tang Ge's words, Gurong and Shenzhen looked at each other, with anticipation in their eyes. As one of the 3 sects on the mainland, the 7 treasure glazed tile school is already famous in the Wuhan world for its auxiliary abilities. It's just that the only pity is that not only Ning Fengzi and Ning Rongrong's father and daughter, but even the entire sect's direct disciples have the strongest soul power that can only reach the soul saint level due to their own defects. But now, with Ning Rongrong and Ning Fengzi successively evolving the Wuhan 7 treasures glazed pagoda to the 9 treasures glazed pagoda, the original defects were instantly made up for. If nothing else. Just as Tang Ge said, the 7 treasures glazed tile sect will usher in the most glorious moment of one school with 2 titles Douluo. At that time, with the auxiliary ability of the 9 treasures glazed tile pagoda reaching title Douluo level, it is not difficult for Gurong and Shenzhen to imagine that there will definitely be a large number of soul masters joining the 7 treasures glazed tile school. It is not impossible to even attract the powerful title Douluo. On the side, Ning Rongrong, who watched his father successfully evolve his martial soul, although young, understood what his father had been longing for a long time. So while she was happy for her father, she couldn't help looking at Tang Ge with a pair of beautiful eyes full of emotion. Thank you, Tang Ge. After kissing Tang Ge's face, although Ning Rongrong was still very shy this time, she did not avoid Tang Ge's eyes. Tang Ge reached out and touched Ning Rongrong's beautiful hair, and said with a smile, "Silly girl, what can you tell me to thank you? But in this way, you owe me more and more, and you probably won't be able to pay it off in this lifetime." Not far away, listening to the conversation between Tang Ge and Ning Rongrong, Gurong and Shenzhen shook their heads helplessly. In front of Tang Ge, this girl, Rongrong, is not as delicate as she used to be. With such an obedient appearance, I am afraid that he has already completely fallen. However, although the 2 of them were a little jealous, they were happy with the result. After all, compared with other teenagers of the same age, Tang Ge is already excellent and can hardly find any faults. He is handsome, strong, and surprisingly talented. If the 7 treasure glazed tile sect can obtain such a son-in-law, it is simply because the seniors burned countless high incense to get it. At this time, Ning Fengzi, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground a few meters away, burst out with a powerful momentum again. Then the released aura shrunk extremely quickly, and it disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ning Fengzi finally opened his eyes slowly as the 9 treasures glazed pagoda radiating 9-colored light continued to rotate around his body. Although he had already felt something in the cultivation just now, after seeing that his martial soul had really evolved successfully, he still couldn't help showing excitement on his face. I really didn't expect that one day I, Ning Fengzi, would also be able to obtain the 9 treasures glazed pagoda in the legend of the sect. The 9 treasures glazed pagoda means that 9 soul rings can be fused together, and the soul power can be raised to title Douluo. Now, although Ning Fengzi's soul power is still at level 79, the quality of his soul power has improved a lot. He believed that with the resources of the 7 treasures glazed tile school, he was at least, % sure that he could raise his soul power to level 90 or above. Gurong and Shenzhen are both titled Douluo, so they can naturally see the state of Ning Fengzi's soul power at this time. They were also happy for Ning Fengzi in their hearts. Among them, Shenzhen said with a smile, "One door with 2 9 treasures, Fengzi, this should be celebrated. And if it wasn't for Tang Ge, you wouldn't have gained this much, so you should thank Tang Ge even more." Hearing Shenzhen's words, Ning Fengzi took a deep breath to suppress the excitement in his heart. He glanced at Tang Ge gratefully, nodded and said, "Uncle Jian is right. This matter is indeed worth celebrating. Tonight I will hold a big banquet in the Zhongmen to celebrate with the disciples of the Zhongmen. However, it's better that only a few of us know about the evolution of my martial soul, and it can't be publicized for the time being, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble." Regarding Ning Fengzi's decision, everyone naturally had no meaning. And they also understand very well that although the evolution of Ning Feng's martial soul is a great thing for the entire sect, some people may not like to see such a thing happen. So even Ning Rongrong, who is usually out of character, nodded very seriously, promising not to tell outsiders. Just at this time, it was already dark outside. After Ning Fengzi asked Ning Rongrong to take Tang Ge to rest for a while, he and Gurong and Shenzhen, 2 titled Douluo, went to prepare the banquet. Perhaps it was because the sect had not held such a banquet in which the entire sect participated for a long time. After learning about the banquet, although everyone in the sect was puzzled, they were even more happy and excited. Even those disciples who were cultivating in closed doors ran out and started to help set it up together. So it didn't take long for the entire 7 treasure glazed tile school to shine brightly, as if it were daytime. Even the residents of Kibao City were alarmed, wondering what happened to the Kibao glazed tile school, and it was so lively. Unfortunately, without the invitation of the 7 treasure glazed tile school, no one dared to join this powerful upper 3 school. 7 treasure glazed tile school, in the pagoda-shaped suzerain main hall. After toasting and drinking with the disciples of the sect further strengthened the cohesion of the sect, Ning Fengzi returned here. But in the huge hall, there were only Ning Fengzi, the 2 titled Douluo, Tang Ge, and Ning Rongrong. While eating and drinking, it was rare for Ning Fengzi to talk about the situation of the entire Kibao glazed tile school when there were non-Zhongmen disciples here. Not to mention the thousands of middle and low-level disciples, there are 86 soul saints and 15 soul fighters. What's more important is that there are 2 titled Douluo, Gurong and Jian Shenzhen, sitting in command. This is also the real reason why the 7 treasure glazed tile school can become one of the top 3 schools. Regarding this, both Gurong and Shenzhen knew the meaning of Ning Fengzi's words. They didn't stop them, but kept their eyes on Tang Ge, with a faint smile on their faces as predicted. After Ning Fengzi finished talking about the situation of the sect, his originally relaxed tone suddenly became serious. He looked at Tang Ge and said very seriously, "Tang Ge, the reason why I tell you so much is to let you know that although my 7 treasure glazed tile sect is famous for assisting martial spirits, its real combat power is not weak. I want you to understand that I, Ning Fengzi, keep my word. Since we promised you that 7 treasure glazed tile sect will obey your arrangement, we will never break our promise. So taking advantage of today's banquet, and in front of the 2 titled Douluo of the sect, I promise again. Tang Ge, all the thousands of disciples of the 7 treasure glazed tile school will be entrusted to you. No matter what decision you make in the future, the 7 treasures glazed tile sect will always stand behind you, depend on each other for life and death, never leave. Ask for a monthly pass." End of this chapter. Chapter 207. Zio He has exposed sharp corners. As the suzerain of the 7 treasure glazed tile sect, Ning Fengzi's words clearly put the future of the entire sect in Tang Ge's hands. If the leaders of other forces were here, they would definitely think this guy was crazy when they heard Ning Fengzi's decision. You must know that according to the previous code of conduct, Ning Fengzi is by no means a reckless person, but acts after making decisions, and is very meticulous in his conduct. But now his approach clearly deviates from his own way of doing things. For the leader of a faction, this is completely taboo. But now, following Ning Fengzi's words, the two titled Douluo, Gurong and Shenzhen, not only did not object, but nodded in agreement. Fengzi means what we mean, but Tang Ge was very surprised after listening to it. He couldn't help looking at Ning Fengzi, and said, Uncle Ning, you just entrusted me with the future of the sect. You must know that I'm only a 13-year-old child. That's right, as the year goes by. Tang Ge is now 13 years old. But even so, he is really just a child in front of these three elders who are often in their 40s and combined are over, years old. But when Ning Fengzi heard Tang Ge's words, he shook his head quite amusingly. At the age of 13, you started to flirt with other adults, and you dare to call yourself a child? Tang Ge, you, Uncle Ning, already know that even the head of the Lizzie clan, Tai Tan, has suffered under your hands. If anyone dares to treat you like a child again, they won't know if you've cheated them to death. Speaking of this, Ning Fengzi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. When he specially went to Shrek Academy to inform the academy teacher Tang Ge to visit his sect, Ning Fengzi asked Zhao Wuji about the battle during the day. Then he learned about Tang Ge beating Tai Tan with one punch. At that time Ning Fengzi was not only surprised, but also delighted, secretly happy that the sect could receive such a treasure. That's why he made that decision just now, in order to bind a genius who was destined to become a titled Douluo in the future with a 7 treasure glazed tile school. So say it. As a suzerain, how could Ning Fengzi make a foolish decision, and even bring 2 titled Douluo to be muddle-headed with him? After listening to Ning Fengzi's words, Tang Ge, who was originally puzzled, suddenly realized. It turned out that the other party already knew about that matter. However, there is no shock value provided. What a dick. With an imperceptible contempt flashing in his eyes, he immediately responded solemnly. Uncle Ning, you can't say that. Just because I'm strong doesn't mean I'm not a child. It just means that you adults are too useless. Are we so useless? Ning Fengzi was choked by Tang Ge's words, and he didn't know how to refute. Because thinking about it this way, it is really useless for him to stay at the Soul Saint level in his 40s. Even Gurong and Shenzhen couldn't laugh or cry when they heard this. In the end Ning Rongrong couldn't stand it any longer. She pouted her lips and said angrily, Hey! Can you adults stop talking about these nonsense things? Tang Ge hasn't eaten much yet, got it? My daughter started to bend her elbows before going out. Being a father is so difficult. Hearing his daughter's dissatisfaction, Ning Fengzi immediately shook his head and sighed, pretending to be disappointed and waved his hands. That's all, I'll talk about these things later, let's eat. In this way, unknowingly, the banquet lasted until late at night, and as the disciples dispersed, the bustling 7 treasure glazed tile school returned to its former tranquility. Tang Ge and Ning Rongrong in the suzerain hall also went back to rest. In the end, only Ning Fengzi, Gurong and Shenzhen were left here. Looking at the Dinghe Shenzhen of the 2 sects in front of him, Ning Fengzi thought for a while before asking, Uncle Gu, Uncle Jian, can you see through this child Tang Ge? What do you mean by that? Do you still think that Tang Ge is deliberately approaching our 7 treasure glazed tile school? Hearing Ning Fengzi's words, Gurong frowned immediately. Ning Fengzi hurriedly shook his head to explain. That's not true, I just feel that this child always makes people feel uncomfortable. Now that I hand over the sect to him, do you think you will have that kind of thought in the future? Gurong understood the meaning of Ning Fengzi's words, and for a while became thoughtful. On the other hand, Jian Changxin suddenly smiled and said, To be honest, I really can't see Tang Ge through, but it is undeniable that he is very good, and there is a calm heart hidden under his unrestrained character. And if you know something about his past experience, you can understand that this kid Tang Ge is definitely worth entrusting his back. Not to mention, think about it, at the age of 13, he already has the strength to compete against Contra. If 5 years, or even 10 years, what level will he go to? Titled Douluo? Or an existence stronger than titled Douluo? When he said this, Jian Changxin's eyes suddenly shot 2 dazzling lights, as if he saw the future Tang Ge's invincible seen across the continent. As soon as these words came out, Gurong and Ning Fengzi were immediately moved. Ning Fengzi, who was still thinking wildly, couldn't help laughing out loud. Uncle Jian is right, with Tang Ge's talent, he will definitely be able to enter the title Douluo level in a few years. If he is supported by me and two uncles, he has nothing to fear even if he wants to pierce the sky. By that time, maybe your 7 treasure glazed tile sex status can be raised to a higher level. Tang Ge didn't know that Ning Fengzi and the 2 title Douluo were discussing him in private, otherwise he would have despised the 3 of them and said that he would be the title Douluo 5 or even 10 years later. One must know that a few days ago, he was able to crush and beat Douluo with his fists. As for piercing the sky, Tang Ge can do it now, but it's not necessary at all. At this time, because he drank too much wine, although he was not very drunk, it was rare that he did not go to practice, but fell asleep on the bed as soon as he returned to his room. Just falling asleep, Tang Ge felt that the quilt that was originally covering him seemed to have been moved. When he woke up, there was another person in the bed where he was the only one. Tang Ge resisted the urge to kick him off the bed with a warm and fragrant feeling coming from behind him, as well as the itchy feeling of the black hair brushing against his nose. He opened his eyes and looked down. At this moment, Ning Rongrong, who was supposed to be resting in another room, was the one curled up and hiding in his arms. The girl was wearing a soft silk nightgown, but it was so thin that it couldn't cover her snow-white skin at all. With a wide neckline, you could see the good things inside at a glance. It wasn't until this time that Tang Ge suddenly realized that the other party had already begun to ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 208. Yubei's giving up. As if sensing Tang Ge's gaze, Ning Rongrong's body trembled, and her small head shrank back under the blanket. Because of the close contact, Tang Ge could even clearly feel that the temperature on this girl's body was rising. There is also the sound of plop and plop getting faster and faster. Tang Ge couldn't help laughing secretly, stretched out his hand to rub the other person's hair, and said, "It's so late and you don't sleep in your room, what are you doing here?" Hearing Tang Ge's words, Ning Rongrong blushed and raised her head. She shyly said, "I can't sleep alone, I'm afraid, I want you to hug and sleep together, and, speaking of this," Ning Rongrong became stuttering as if there was something unspeakable. Her face was as red as a ripe apple. Seeing this, Tang Ge couldn't help tapping the opponent's forehead with his fingers. "It's fine to let me hug you to sleep, but don't think about anything else, you're too young." As a result, as soon as these words were said, Ning Rongrong, who was originally extremely shy, suddenly became anxious. "Tang Ge, I'm not young at all, take a look if you don't believe me." As she said that, she wanted to open the collar of her pajamas for Tang Ge to see. Tang Ge was taken aback, and quickly stopped Ning Rongrong's behavior. "My aunt. You are just looking for trouble, if you continue, you will break the taboo." Then without waiting for Ning Rongrong to say anything, he directly stretched out his hand to hold the other party in his arms, and patted the other party's back. "Hey, don't think too much, sleep well." Being hugged by Tang Ge like this, Ning Rongrong only felt as if she had returned to her mother's arms when she was a child, and she was immediately warm and at ease. She closed her eyes gently, and fell into a dream after a while. Tang Ge smiled, and then fell asleep. For the next 2 days, Tang Ge spent all his time in the 7 treasure glazed tile school. During this period, Ning Fengzi especially took him to get to know the middle and high-level fighters in the sect. Although Ning Fengzi didn't say anything, these middle and high-level combat forces understood the real meaning of the opponent. So even though they looked at Tang Ge as just a teenager, they didn't despise each other at all, but were very enthusiastic. As far as Tang Ge is concerned, he secretly feels pity in his heart. Originally, he wanted to take the opportunity to harvest another wave of shock points, but after Ning Fengzi privately signaled him not to show his strength, he had no choice but to give up. And on the 3rd day, Tang Ge was really bored, so he said goodbye to Ning Fengzi and returned to Shrek Academy with Ning Rongrong. At the same time, Myriad, who went out to obtain the 4th spirit ring, also returned smoothly. This afternoon, after celebrating with his classmates, Myriad suddenly came to Tang Ge's residence alone. Looking at Myriad in the room, Tang Ge smiled and said, "Congratulations, Brother Myriad." This was the first time he heard Tang Ge call himself Brother Myriad, so Myriad was a little flattered. Immediately afterwards, he smiled wryly again, and said, "Compared to you, Boss Tang, my strength is really nothing," because when he came back, He had already heard about what happened between Tai Long's family and Tang Ge from his classmates, so Daimyo Bei had already given up the idea of catching up with Tang Ge. It's not that he wants to be a salted fish, but that he is really powerless. After all, sometimes no matter how hard you try, you can't bridge the gap between people. Consoling himself like this, Daimyo Bei's depressed mood immediately improved a lot. It wasn't long before he began to talk about the real purpose of his visit this time. In fact, it was because of Zhu Xiuqing's affairs. And after telling about his childish relationship with Zhu Xiuqing, Daimyo Bei also told about his identity as the Prince of the Star Luo Empire. At the end, he immediately said sincerely to Tang Ge, "I know that Xiuqing's thoughts are on you, so I have already thought about it and chose to give up. After all, things that have no results are reluctant to come. It's just that I hope Tang Ge you can promise me that you can help me when I fight for the Crown Prince later." "Huh? You mean you're trading terms with me?" Tang Ge's eyes narrowed directly. Seeing this, Daimyo Bei felt a chill coming over him. He immediately shook his head in a panic to explain. "It's not an exchange of conditions, but a request for help from a classmate. But if you think Tang Ge is inappropriate, in fact," but before he finished speaking, Tang Ge suddenly reached out to stop his neck and laughed out loud. "Ha ha ha, what is the second child talking about? The classmates should help each other before, so why ask for help? Don't worry, at that time, you, Boss Tang, and I will definitely be there, and I will definitely make you the Crown Prince of the Star Luo Empire." Hearing Tang Ge's words, Daimyo Bei, who had always been on tenterhooks, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. And he found that he seemed to prefer the other party to call him Dailauer. But no matter what, with Tang Ge's promise, the pressure Daimyo Bei had accumulated in his heart could not help but weaken a lot. He looked out of the window, and seemed to see his powerful brother, his eyes full of fighting intent. "Just wait. I will never lose to you." Time passed quickly, and another 2 days passed. Because Daimyo Bei had already obtained the 4th spirit ring, there was only less than half a year left in the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Elite competition. Therefore, in order to make adequate preparations before the start of the competition, the 9 Shrek monsters have all entered a state of high-intensity cultivation, striving to enter the Soul Ancestor level as soon as possible. It's just that this is useless to Tang Ge. His soul power has already reached the bottleneck stage of level. The ancient Eucharist also stayed at 19% awakening, approaching a breakthrough. Therefore, the most important thing for Tang Ge at present is to obtain a suitable soul ring and treasures that can assist the ancient holy body to successfully survive the thunder disaster. So he decided to leave Shrek Academy and go to Star Dao Forest. After learning of Tang Ge's decision, Flender did not stop him, but only asked the other party to keep a low profile in everything, and it would be best not to cause trouble. Because he knows the character of this little guy best, he is simply a troublemaker. Tang Ge originally planned to stay in the Star Dao Forest for the next 6 months, so naturally he listened to Flender's request very sensibly. Then, without saying goodbye to a classmate, Flender was the only one to see him off. As soon as Tang Ge left the Heaven Dao Imperial City, he immediately used his yin-yang wings to soar into the sky, and flew towards the southwest direction of the Star Dao Forest bordering the Bara Kingdom. Because of his high speed, he barely rested along the way, so he arrived at Soto City in Bara Kingdom in just 1 day. It was night now. After parting for half a year and returning to the old place again, Tang Ge felt a sense of intimacy in his heart. And thinking of the beautiful long-legged beauty Ding Dong in the Great Soul Arena that he had met with before, he didn't rush to go to the Star Dao Forest, but walked directly in the direction of the Great Soul Arena in Suatro City. Go. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 209. Don't come out to scare people if you are ugly. Half a year has passed, and although the Shrek 9 monsters have left, the brilliance they created has remained here. The first soul-level Golden Fighting Soul Team, the holder of a record of all victories. Any one of them is worthy of learning and pursuit by many teams. So when Tang Ge came to the Great Soul Arena in Suatro City again, he could see that many soul masters who came to participate in the competition wore masks like the Shrek 9 monsters. And from time to time, people can hear people talking about the tactics used by the Shrek 9 monsters in the past, in order to improve the combat effectiveness of their own team. More of them mentioned the glorious record of the ancient sage, who always punched his opponents in every battle. Tang Ge was very proud of this. Unexpectedly, he has already left, but there are still legends about him here. Thinking of this, Tang Ge soon came to the place where Ding Dong worked. From a distance, he saw Ding Dong with purple hair registering his identity information as a soul master. The other party was still wearing a pair of white talo stockings on his long legs, until the short skirt covered them. Not seeing her for half a year, this long-legged beauty has become more and more charming. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge's heart began to look forward to it, and he involuntarily quickened his pace. But just when he was about to walk in front of Ding Dong, a young man with short hair and wearing a black and white tuxedo suddenly appeared, handed 99 roses in his hand to Ding Dong, knelt down on one knee and with a sincere face. Ding Dong, marry me, because the young man turned his back to Tang Ge. Tang Ge couldn't see what the other person looked like. However, he still stopped and didn't rush to walk over, but waited for Ding Dong's reaction. At this time, Ding Dong, who was startled, also came back to his senses. It seemed that because she had met the young man many times, she didn't feel any suddenness in this incident, she just looked embarrassed. But the onlookers didn't think it was a big deal. Seeing this scene, they all laughed and spoke. Ding and beauty, Liu Sheng has been here so many times, even if you don't agree to marry him, at least you should go out to have a meal with him, right? This friend is right. Liu Sheng is also a powerful soul master, and you Ding Dong are just ordinary people. His sincerity is enough to give you face, that is, if you still refuse this time, then you really don't know what is good and what is bad. Could it be that there is still a man better than Liu Sheng hidden in your heart? When the last person mentioned other men, a hint of resentment flashed across Ding Dong's charming face. Although it disappeared quickly, it was still noticed by the young man kneeling on one knee. Suddenly, a gloomy and terrifying breath was released from the young man. He slowly stood up from the ground, and said in a slightly hoarse voice, Ding Dong, you really don't want to marry me? Looking at the young man's appearance at this moment, Ding Dong couldn't help showing a touch of fear on his face. But she still shook her head and said, Liu Sheng, I know you are excellent, but I really don't deserve you. So I hope you don't come to me again. There are many girls who are much better than me in this world. This is a dark euphemism, but the meaning is very simple. That is, you are excellent. But I just don't like you. So as soon as Ding Dong's voice fell, a putchy laughter suddenly came from not far in front. How dare someone laugh at Liu Sheng? The onlookers were all surprised, and couldn't help but look in the direction of the laughter. Jingle is no exception. But when she saw the tall familiar figure 5 or 6 meters away, she trembled suddenly, and then ran over excitedly. Tang Ge. It was Tang Ge who laughed just now. Originally, he thought that Ding Dong had met his true love, so he planned not to disturb her. After listening to the end, Tang Ge realized that everything about his feelings was the wishful thinking of the young man in the tuxedo. And it seemed that because of Ding Dong's refusal, the young man was immediately furious, and he was afraid that he would say some threatening words next. Coupled with the funny words of persuasion that Ding Dong said, Tang Ge finally couldn't bear it and laughed outright. Seeing Ding Dong running over desperately at this moment, he smiled slightly and opened his arms. With a beautiful woman in his arms, a faint fragrance came to his face, making Tang Ge take a deep breath. It's so fragrant. Hearing Tang Ge's words, Ding Dong's charming face was even more happy. She slightly raised her head to look at the face in front of her that was always engraved in her mind, and involuntarily stretched out her delicate little hand to touch it. Tang Ge, I haven't seen you in half a year, you've become even more handsome, you look better, too. Tang Ge's heart twitched slightly, but he still smiled and replied. Because the conversation between the two of them did not deliberately lower their voices, the young man in a tuxedo who was opposite could hear them clearly. Originally resentful because of Ding Dong's refusal, he couldn't bear it any longer, and turned around abruptly. Suddenly, the appearance of this tuxedo youth appeared in front of Tang Ge. When he saw the wrinkled and bruised hideous face of the other party clearly, Tang Ge couldn't help but gasp in fright even though he was mentally strong. Be nice. Did this guy do something terrible and bad in his previous life to be punished like this? And at this time, he finally understood the real reason why Ding Dong rejected the other party many times even though he knew that the other party was soul sect tuxedos. Have this ghostly look. Tang Ge was really afraid that Ding Dong, who was just an ordinary person, would be scared to death when he woke up one night after agreeing to the marriage proposal. It seems that any girl would seriously consider this. What's more, Ding Dong beauty is still a beauty control. On the opposite side, the young man in tuxedo, who was already very concerned about his appearance, saw the scene where Tang Ge was frightened by his own ugly appearance. Immediately, A strong murderous intent was released from him, and his eyes were fixed on Tang Ge. Who are you? You dare to rob women with me, Liu Sheng? Aren't you afraid of death? Outside, all the soul masters who dared to fight against him died in Liu Sheng's hands. But unfortunately, the person standing opposite him at this moment is not an ordinary soul master. So when Liu Sheng's murderous intent rushed over, Tang Ge, who didn't want to cause trouble at first, noticed the pale face of Karen in his arms, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Immediately, a more terrifying aura was released from him, and he directly charged towards Liu Sheng, who was opposite him. The space was shocked to the point of ripples visible to the naked eye. Liu Sheng, who was in the impact range of the momentum, was dressed in a tuxedo and felt as if an overwhelming tsunami was coming, and instantly slapped him to the ground. Looking at Liu Sheng, who was struggling to breathe due to the tremendous pressure, Tang Ge said coldly without a trace of sympathy in his eyes. Compared to your aura, you are still far behind, so don't come out to scare people. If you are ugly, ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210. Brother New, come out to pick up the guests. Here, many people have gathered without knowing it. Obviously they all recognized Liu Sheng, mainly because Liu Sheng was too attractive. It's just that Liu Sheng, who has the strength of the soul sect, was pressed down on the ground by the boy who had never masked his face, and the faces of these onlookers suddenly showed incredulous expressions. Who is this boy? So strong. Even Liu Sheng, who was lying on the ground, felt as if a mountain was on his body, and it became difficult for him to breathe. At the same time, he regretted even more in his heart. He never thought that the other party looked young, but his strength was so terrifying. Who are you? Finally holding his breath, Liu Sheng raised his head and looked at Tang Ge unwillingly, and said. Listening to the system prompts that kept ringing in his mind, Tang Ge's face suddenly showed disdain. You don't deserve to know. At this time, the other soul masters gathered around seemed to see something. Their expressions changed one after another, and then immediately dispersed to both sides. As a passage was opened, a middle-aged man with a majestic face walked in from the outside. He first saw Liu Sheng, who was lying on the ground under a strong momentum, frowned, and couldn't help asking angrily, what's going on? But then the middle-aged man noticed Tang Ge and Ding Dong on the other side. When Ding Dong saw the middle-aged man, a look of fear suddenly appeared on his rosy face, and he quickly broke free from Tang Ge's arms. She said with some fear, Director, all of this is me. But before Ding Dong could finish speaking, Tang Ge, who was on the side, suddenly walked up to her. Looking at the middle-aged man, Tang Ge smiled and said, Director Bo, long time no see, it was you. After recognizing Tang Ge, Supervisor Ao, who had cooperated with the Shrek 9 monsters, showed a kind smile on his originally majestic face. But immediately he was a little puzzled and said, Didn't you go to Xiandao Imperial City? Why did you come back all of a sudden? I'm the only one coming back this time. I'm going to practice in the Star Dao Forest for a while. I happened to pass by here, so I came to have a look. Tang Ge said, Come and see. Director Ao couldn't help but glance at Ding Dong behind him. A look of surprise flashed in his eyes. Then he smiled and nodded. I originally wanted to let you participate in a game, but now it seems that it is better not to disturb you. What is her name? This question was asked of Tang Ge. But Ding Dong stood up quickly after hearing this, and said very cautiously, Master. Supervisor, my name is Ding Dong. Ding Dong? Good name. Since Tang Ge came to you, then I approve that you can leave work now, Supervisor Ao said with a smile. Ding Dong couldn't help but widen her beautiful eyes when she heard it. It seemed a little inconceivable. But Tang Ge said to Director Ao, Then thank you, Director Ao. I will call on Director Ao next time I have a chance. Jingle, let's go. After speaking, he held Ding Dong's hand, and left the Suachuo Great Spirit Arena directly under the other's dizzy expression. As soon as the two of them left, Director Ao's originally smiling face immediately darkened. Come on, he suddenly yelled. Not long after, two guards from the Great Soul Arena rushed over. Hello Supervisor, the two saluted Supervisor Ao. Not far away, Liu Sheng realized that something was wrong when he saw that the young man who had snatched the woman he liked just now was acquainted with Supervisor Ao. At this moment, Seeing two more guards coming, his face suddenly turned pale, and he knelt down on the ground without hesitation. "Director Ao, please forgive me," but Director Ao ignored Liu Sheng's begging for mercy at all, and directly ordered the two guards in a row. "Bring this person who dared to make trouble in the big spirit fighting field to the death fighting spirit area. When will he die, and when will it end?" "Yes, Director Ao." After the two guards heard the order, they immediately put up Liu Sheng's arms, one left and one right, and dragged each other directly towards the interior of the fighting spirit field. There were bursts of hysterical begging and cursing in the distance, but they became weaker and weaker, and soon disappeared completely. Director Ao also turned and left. And the remaining onlookers, after recovering their senses, couldn't help but gasp in a hiss. They understood that Liu Sheng, who was taken away, might never come out alive again. At the same time, these people also secretly reminded themselves that they should not make trouble here no matter what, let alone offend this strange boy who had known Director Ao before. As for what happened here, Tang Ge, who left early, also spent a day of crazy output on Ding Dong, and after resting with him for a day, he didn't know until the morning of the third day when he sent him to the Great Soul Arena. Originally, he planned to find a chance to get rid of that Liu Sheng, so that he wouldn't attack Ding after he left. But since Director Ao of the Great Soul Arena has already solved it for him, Tang Ge can save himself. So after comforting the reluctant Ding Dong, Tang Ge left Suachuo City again and went straight to the Star Forest. In the afternoon, the vast Star Dao Forest was as quiet as ever. The lush trees cover the sky and the sun, and the phenomenon of mantis catching cicadas, and orioles behind appears from time to time in dark places. The soul masters who came to hunt the soul beasts to obtain the soul rings also formed a small group and moved forward cautiously. But if they looked up at the sky at this moment, they could see a figure appearing strangely under the cover of the dense tree canopy, and then disappearing strangely. When this figure appeared again, it was already 100 meters away, like a ghost. Even if there are occasional flying thousand-year-old soul beasts appearing in the sky, trying to attack this figure, they can't even touch the afterimage of the other party. There was even a flying soul beast that was even more miserable. It didn't even have the chance to react, and its body was smashed to pieces by the sudden appearance of the figure. Immediately, scalding blood, wrapped in mincemeat, sprinkled down from midair. In the end, the ghostly figure finally stopped completely and revealed its appearance. Look at his extremely handsome face with a smile all the time. Who else would it be if it wasn't Tang Ge? At this time, Tang Ge had already arrived at the core area of the Star Dao Great Forest. Here, there are no 1,000-year soul beasts, at least 10,000-year soul beasts. Among them, in the deep blue lake in the central area, there's even a terrifying aura that even titled Douluo's heart palpitations. But facing this terrifying atmosphere, Tang Ge was not only not afraid, but was full of anticipation in his heart. Immediately he yelled loudly, "Brother Niu! You are so handsome that your old friend has come to see you. Why don't you hurry up and pick up the guests?" The sound was like thunder, and ripples appeared on the surface of the lake, and then rushed in all directions. Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Chapter 211. You are so kind, I love you. The sound was deafening, causing ripples on the surface of the huge lake. Not only that, but at the same time as he shouted these words, Tang Ge released his martial spirit and spirit ring. The map of the mountains and rivers floated above his head, and the field of mountains and rivers suddenly unfolded, and the situation within a radius of, meters was under control. The 5,000-year soul rings moved slowly, and the pitch-black light was like a black hole, constantly devouring other colors around them. Sudden. There was a terrifying roar in the distance, followed by the ground trembling violently. Countless birds, souls and beasts were frightened, and they flapped their wings and scattered away. The originally dense forests are also falling down in pieces. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help muttering to himself, "Hey, I didn't expect Xian to like me so much," and he rushed here so eagerly when he heard my shout, as predicted. In less than a moment, with the last big tree falling, a figure more than 10 meters high suddenly appeared in Tang Ge's field of vision. It is a Titan great ape with a cultivation base of 10 years. At this moment, the Titan giant ape thought that there was an enemy coming, and it rushed back immediately after playing outside, with an extremely angry look on its ferocious face. But when he looked up and saw Tang Ge, who was staring at the sky above the lake and smiling straight, the Titan giant ape's originally angry expression froze for a moment. In its mind, It couldn't help thinking of the history of humiliation when it was a mount. But more is still afraid. So after regaining consciousness, the Titan giant ape immediately turned around without hesitation and was about to escape from here. Sorry to interrupt. But it's a pity. Tang Ge watched the Titan giant ape appear. How could he let the other party go so easily? So he disappeared in a flash, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of the Titan great ape. Looking at the sad and angry Titan ape, Tang Ge burst out laughing. Xiao Tan, since you're here, why bother to leave? Give me a punch first. As soon as the words fell, the ancient holy body with 19.00% awakening speed was immediately urged to the extreme by him. Coupled with the word zing and the heavenly fist, Tang Ge's punch released a majestic aura. The surrounding space is directly squeezed and distorted. The terrifying pressure enveloped his body, and the Titan giant ape had no way to retreat, and immediately roared into the sky. Now, then it also clenched its fist and slammed it hard. Rumble. Rumble. Finally, when Tang Ge's fist collided with the Titan's fist, there was a deafening explosion. The terrifying power was released, and immediately set off space ripples, rushing towards all directions. Among them, a figure retreated to the distance at a very fast speed, and did not stop until it was more than 100 meters away. This figure is Tang Ge. He looked at the Titan giant ape, who had only taken a few steps back under the attack just now. Not only was he not discouraged, but he laughed loudly instead. Happy. Really happy, but the Titan great ape doesn't think so. After seeing Tang Ge being repulsed by itself, it was taken aback for a moment, and then was overjoyed. It turns out that this human being is not that scary. Thinking of this, the Titan giant ape immediately beat its heart with both hands, and rushed forward on its own initiative. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge not only raised his eyebrows. Yo. This is about to start revenge? Immediately before the Titan giant ape rushed over, he gently spread his right hand, and an inch-long sword shadow emerged, and the originally clear sky suddenly became gloomy. Dark clouds were densely covered, and thunderous sounds of boom and boom came from inside. Endless pressure appeared, and the soul beasts in other places in the starred-out Great Forest just felt uncomfortable. But in the core area where the Great Lake is located, all the monsters seemed to have a feeling of wrath, and they were suddenly scared to lie on the ground and tremble. And besides this heavenly power, there is also a more terrifying destructive sword intent, which seems to hang over their heads as well, as if it might completely tear them apart at any time. Especially the nearest Titan giant ape, when he saw the sword shadow released by Tang Ge, he was so frightened that he hit the ground on all fours and forcibly braked. The entire ground was plowed out with 2 rows of deep marks due to its huge inertia. When it stopped, the giant ape titan hid its head in its arms like a child who had made a mistake, without the ferocity it had just now. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked Erming, and gained, shock points. Hearing the system notification sound in his mind, Tang Ge smiled triumphantly, and directly drew a trace of sword energy from the sword shadow in the palm of his hand, and released it towards a high mountain in the distance. Rumble. That ray of sword energy was almost invisible, but when it touched the 1,000-meter high mountain in the distance, it erupted with unimaginable terrifying power in an instant. Accompanied by the deafening explosion, the nearly 1,000-meter high mountain was destroyed in an instant like tofu. There's even a huge pit left in place. Just at this time, in the violent tumbling of the lake, the azure bull python with huge long horns slowly poked its head out of it, and then saw the scene of Tang Ge releasing his sword energy. Although it remembered that this human being had been here before, and revealed this kind of destruction sword that shocked even the sky. But now seeing with his own eyes that the opponent can crush a 1,000-meter high mountain in an instant with just a sliver of almost negligible sword energy, the sky blue bull python is still extremely shocked. It knew that the sword shadow was the second martial soul of this human being. But it was because he knew that Sky Blue Neobog couldn't believe what kind of second martial spirit the other party was, who could trigger sky change with just his breath. Just as he was thinking, a pair of huge eyes of the azure bull python suddenly tightened, and even the body hidden in the lake was involuntarily revealed. He saw that the human who had just destroyed a mountain suddenly flew towards this side. Although the opponent had already put away the sword shadow in his hand, the azure Neoban was still extremely nervous, and opened his mouth to make a tentative inquiry. Human, you came here suddenly, but do you need Erming to help you find a suitable spirit ring? Woo! At aiming, the Titan giant ape who hid his head in the distance heard the voice of the sky blue bull python, and felt that his heart had been stabbed hard. and suddenly cried out of embarrassment and grievance. And Tang Ge, who just came to the sky above the lake, was also taken aback by the sudden flattery of King Nuban. After a while, he came back to his senses. Looking at the Azure Nuban, who became more nervous because he didn't answer, Tang Ge secretly smiled in his heart, and at the same time showed a friendly smile on his face. Daming, Erming, you are so kind, I love you. After saying this, he fell directly from midair. As for the sky blue Nuban, he immediately became dazed, staring blankly at Tang Ge, who had started to practice after falling on the grass below. At this moment, it felt that the brains of its majestic over 10-year-old soul beast were not enough. What does the other party mean? Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 212. 20 draws in a row, the light is overflowing. As an emperor-like existence in the starred-out Great Forest, it has been a long time since Sky Blue Niubag has seen a human titled Douluo dare to appear here. But Tang Ge is an exception. Not only did the other party come, but they also subdued the Sky Blue Bull Python and the Titan Giant Ape without the title Douluo. After letting the Titan Giant Ape send him away, the Azure Bull Python thought that he would never see this human being again. But now that the other party came suddenly again, with such a terrifying sword aura in the beginning, it couldn't help but wonder if the other party came to kill him and the Giant Ape to get the soul ring. So as soon as Tang Ge flew over, the Azure Bull Python pushed the Titan Giant Ape out without hesitation. After all, the Titan Giant Ape had been the opponent's temporary mount back then, and there was more or less affection between the two parties. It's just that what King Nuban didn't expect was that after the human being said a very common and extremely disgusting sentence among human beings, he suddenly fell down and began to practice. No hands. Don't say harsh words. It really looks like she is practicing purely. The Sky Blue Bull Python was stunned all of a sudden. Even if it had a brain capacity comparable to that of a human wise man, it still couldn't figure out what the other party meant by this sentence. How nice are we, love us. Be a liar. King Nuban felt that there was a fraud in it, so even if he saw Tang Ge fall, he didn't dare to relax in the slightest. It wasn't until the Titan Giant Ape hiding in the distance returned quietly, and Tang Ge still didn't respond, that it was sure that the other party was really just practicing. This made the Azure Bull Python heave a sigh of relief, but at the same time felt extremely depressed. And when the Titan Giant Ape saw Tang Ge, who seemed to be defenseless, his mind suddenly became active. Its lantern-sized eyes couldn't help revealing a touch of excitement, and it stretched out its hand to wipe its neck towards the Azure Bull Python. It seemed to say, "Daming, take this opportunity and kill Tang Ge." As a result, just as the Titan Giant Ape finished gesturing, the thick long tail of the Azure Bull Python that was hidden in the lake suddenly appeared, and it was slapped to the ground with a slap. Immediately afterwards, the Azure Bull Python's low growl full of warning came from next to its ears. "Erming, don't mess around." The Titan Great Ape lying on the ground looked aggrieved. "This daming is too hateful. What kind of ability is it to bully it all the time? If you have the ability to bully that human being, HMPH, if you have a chance, encourage that human being and beat up daming too." On the grass by the lake, although Tang Ge sat cross-legged on the ground, his body also had soul power fluctuations. But his situation is not because he is practicing, but because he is too excited. Naturally, he also noticed the small movements of the Azure Bull Python and the Titan Giant Ape. But Tang Ge didn't care about these two soul beasts at all at the moment. His consciousness was immersed in the system panel, shocking system, host, Tang Ge, level, Soul King, martial souls, twin martial souls, map of mountains and rivers, 4 swords of immortals, spirit ring, black, affected by the field of mountains and rivers. Can be merged into one and change any color. Soul skill, mountain and river domain, unique, currently covering a spherical area with a radius of, meters around the host. Soul spike, yin-yang wings, Mahamudra of life and death, Tai Chi sword formation, martial arts, random cloaking windhammer method, secretive Xing character, hell smelting, heavenly god fist, physique, ancient holy body, awakening 19%, shock value 201,250, that's right. Tang Ge's other information has not changed, but the shock value has reached as much as 20. Among them, the last nearly, shock points were provided by the Azure Bull Python and the Titan Giant Ape. It is precisely because of the selfless dedication of these two 10-year-old soul beasts that Tang Ge said such nasty things to them. As a result, because of this, the Azure Newbie couldn't help but start thinking wildly. And Tang Ge saw that he had saved for such a long time and finally reached the shock value of 20. He was both excited and extremely emotional. Finally, I can draw 10 times in a row again, but this time I want to draw 20 times in a row, because you already had the previous 10 consecutive lottery draws. He always thought that his luck was very good. This time is no exception. So after calming down his excited mood a little bit, Tang Ge immediately recited silently in his heart. Start 20 consecutive draws. Ding dong. It is detected that the shock value of the host meets the conditions for 20 consecutive draws. The heavens roulette is activated, and the lottery draw begins. Along with the system prompt, a huge roulette suddenly appeared in front of Tang Ge. The top of the roulette is covered with a layer of fog, and it is impossible to see through the hidden things inside. But as it rotated, bright rays of light suddenly emanated from it. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge couldn't help revealing a look of anticipation in his eyes, and muttered to himself, "This is my first, consecutive draws, but I must work hard." Then he folded his hands involuntarily, closed his eyes and began to wait. In the nothingness that no one can see, the roulette connecting the worlds of the heavens is spinning faster and faster. When it reaches the extreme, it is accompanied by dazzling light. One after another treasures were spewed out from the roulette covered by the mist. At the same time, bursts of extremely harsh system prompts rang in Tang Ge's ears. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully drawn a foundation establishment pill. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have drawn, top quality spirit stones 4 times in a row. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted a shatters fruit. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted a transformation pill. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted a bottle of Emperor liquid juice. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have drawn a tribulation thunder pill twice in a row. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted, caddies. It seems that because the treasure is so good, the sound of the system becomes harsher the further you go. This was only reminded 11 times, and Tang Ge felt his head was about to explode. He couldn't help but want to block the notification sound, but thinking that even the sources in the shrouding world had been extracted, there might be more precious treasures appearing later. In order to prevent the quality of the treasure from being affected by his actions, Tang Ge gritted his teeth and continued to listen. It's just that at this moment, the smile that was originally on his face has disappeared, and because of the uncomfortable noise in his head, he has become ferocious. Even his body began to release a powerful aura. Not far away, the Azure Bull Python and the Titan Giant Ape have been secretly watching Tang Ge, trying to find something special about this human being. After all, it was the first time for them to encounter such a terrifying human being at such a young age, with such power that even the titled Douluo among humans had to kneel down. But the sudden change of the opponent's aura at this moment shocked the Azure Bull Python and the Titan Giant Ape. What does he mean? Could it be that we found out that we were secretly studying him? For a moment, these two soul beasts, whose combined soul age was over 20 years old, suddenly became tense again. Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 213 Fusion of a 10-year soul ring. Tang Ge was about to be driven mad by the increasingly harsh system prompts at this moment. How could he be in the mood to pay attention to the amusing behavior of the two soul beasts, the Azure Bull Python and the Titan Giant Ape? He could only grit his teeth and continue listening. Fortunately, following the system prompt, the reappearing treasure finally comforted his wounded heart. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted, caddies. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted the 9 dragons pulling the coffin from the timeline of the world that shrouds the sky. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, successfully extracted the blood fruit from the divine beast golden-eyed stone ape. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, successfully extracted a 10-year soul ring from the giant spirit god. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted the defense method, the battle robe of the gods. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted the method of shrouding the sky, cutting finger. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted the sky shrouding cultivation method, Zihuangjing, Tao Palace Chapter, Ding Dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted the Sky Shrouding Cultivation Method, Eternal Universe Sutra, 4 Extremes Chapter, Ding Dong, congratulations to the host, you have successfully extracted the Gate of the Heavens, one time, and the more he listened, the more excited Tang Ge became. Especially when he heard the 10-year soul ring and the Sky Shrouding Cultivation Method at the end, he couldn't help but get excited, and he stood up from the ground all of a sudden. This sudden behavior frightened the already extremely nervous Titan giant ape to jump, and actually directly hugged the azure bull python's neck and hung it on its body. But the sky blue bull python set off turbulent waves in the lake, pulled out its huge body, and retreated hundreds of meters away with great flexibility. Along the way, I don't know how many flowers, plants and trees were destroyed by it. But at this moment, the azure bull python couldn't care less about protecting the natural environment, and a pair of huge eyes were fixed on the direction it had just fled from. There, a powerful aura suddenly appeared, and then suddenly fell silent. Xian King Niuban also saw Tang Ge, who had stood up and sat on the ground again. The opponent did not catch up. This made the azure bull python breathe a sigh of relief. But after getting rid of the idiot Erming hanging on him, it didn't dare to go back, but just waited here. The continuous system prompts have disappeared, and Tang Ge finally no longer has to endure the noisy feeling just now. But if he had a choice, he really wanted to speak out to the system. Come on, I won't bother you if it rings 100 times, it's not that Tang Ge is thick-skinned, but because the treasures drawn in the 20 consecutive draws this time are really good. So good it felt like he was in a dream. Not to mention the foundation building pills and top-grade spirit stones, these originally precious treasures can only be at the bottom of the consecutive draws this time. Even the Xianyun fruit, which can prolong life for 100 years, and the transformation pill, which can transform monsters, are nothing. Deliri is barely strong, mainly because it has a greater effect on transformed monsters. The appearance of the 2 Tribulation Thunder pills solved Tang Ge's current urgent need. At least with the help of these 2 pills, he is more confident to survive the thunder disaster of the ancient holy body that he will face next. And the source of, caddies behind is also extraordinary. It is an important cultivation resource in the world of shading the sky, and it has a huge effect on the cultivation of Tang Ge Huang's ancient holy body. However, the most precious of these, lottery draws are the Zihuang Sutra, Tao Palace Chapter, and Hengaiyu Sutra, 4 Poles Chapter, in the Zhishin method, as well as the last gate of the heavens. Among them, the Western Emperor's Sutra, Tao Palace Chapter, and Eternal Universe Sutra, 4 Extremes Chapter, just correspond to the strongest cultivation method of the second and third realms of shading the sky. The Gate of the Heavens can form a stable passage connecting the 2 worlds after it is activated, but because it is a one-time treasure, its existence time is limited. But now Tang Ge just got the 9 dragons pulling the coffin chapter in the timeline of the shrouding world, plus the coordinates of the shading world that he got before. If he uses the Gate of the Heavens, he can safely arrive at the shrouding world and enter the timeline before the start of 9 dragons coffin pulling. This is just enough to help Tang Ge go to the Shaishan world to make a breakthrough in the ancient holy body. But it's a pity that he didn't get the Lunhe chapter in the Zhishin method, otherwise he could open up the Sea of Suffering first. Of course, Tang Ge was not disappointed, because he knew that as long as he went to the world of shading the sky, he could still get the strongest cultivation method of the Lunhe chapter in the plot of pulling the coffin in 9 dragons. In addition to these, there are also the strongest defensive method God's battle robe from the divine elephant suppressing prison strength, and the unique skill Giantian finger from the sky shading method Void Sutra. The 2 supernatural powers and unique learning immediately brought Tang Ge's background to a higher level. It can be said that if the supernatural powers and treasures he currently possesses are spread out, the title Douluo in the entire Douluo Continent will probably go crazy. Tang Ge couldn't help feeling extremely proud. No way. Wall hanging is invincible. As for the last thing left is the bloodline fruit of the equally useful divine beast golden crystal stone ape, and the 10-year soul ring from the giant spirit god that is most critical to Tang Ge at present. Seeing that the one drawn this time turned out to be a 10-year soul ring, and it was also from the giant spirit god in Journey to the West. Although Tang Ge was surprised, he also understood that the giant spirit god is a giant spirit god, and the 10-year soul ring from it does not represent its true combat power. But even if it is only 10 years old, it is enough for Tang Ge to use now. At this time, as the lottery draw ended, The huge heavenly roulette slowly disappeared again. 20 pieces of treasures from various worlds also restrained their own light, and directly entered the system space without revealing a trace of breath. Tang Ge took a deep breath and opened his eyes immediately. He was not in a hurry to fuse the soul ring immediately, but turned his head to look at the azure bull python, who had fled hundreds of meters away at some point, and said with a smile, "Brother Niu, I'm going to make a small breakthrough in cultivation. Do you mind lending this precious land to me? Whatever you say. You can stay here as long as you want, and Erming and I are here, so the nearby spirit beasts and humans won't disturb you." Hearing Tang Ge's words, the Azure Nuban, who was secretly vigilant, was taken aback for a moment, and then hurriedly said. Tang Ge smiled and nodded. "Then I'm going to trouble Brother Niu. After I break through, I happen to have some good gifts for you. The gift will be waived. We just ask you to leave as soon as possible after breaking through." Sky Blue Bull Python couldn't help muttering in his heart. Just as soon as he thought of this, a terrifying aura suddenly reappeared from the direction of the lake, and then it saw an incredible scene. The Titan giant ape next to him also stared with a pair of lantern eyes. His facial expression was extremely dull. Under the unbelievable eyes of these two 10-year-old soul beasts, Tang Ge, who was sitting cross-legged by the lake, closed his eyes again, and a crimson halo suddenly appeared in front of him. This crimson halo is obviously the 10-year soul ring from the giant spirit god. The moment Singer Tang drew it over with a hook and merged into his body, the original restrained crimson light suddenly centered on him and spread out in all directions. Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Chapter 214 Giant Spirit God Incarnation. The crimson light spread quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it enveloped the entire Great Lake and its range of a kilometer outward. In this crimson light, there seems to be a divine power. Its terrifying coercion made all the soul beasts who had no time to escape frightened and lay down on the ground, not daring to move. Even the flowers, plants and trees directly lowered their heads and became half shorter. Even as soul beasts of 10 years, Azure Bull Python and Titan Giant Ape are under enormous pressure at this moment. They recognized that the Crimson Halo was definitely a soul ring that only 10-year-old soul beasts could produce, but the aura was even more terrifying than a 10-year-old soul ring. And the Azure Bull Python, whose true strength has exceeded 10 years, is absolutely certain that the soul ring absorbed by the human by the lake at this moment is by no means an ordinary 10-year soul ring. The strength of the soul beast that produces the soul ring is probably much stronger than that of the Azure Bull Python. This made King Niuban feel as if there was a turbulent wave in his heart. It was so shocking that it was unimaginable how the human named Tang Ge obtained this kind of soul ring. And how did the other party conjure the soul ring out of thin air? Terrible, mysterious. Unknowingly, the Azure Newbie began to feel scared. This is the first time in the life of a soul beast that it, as the Emperor in the starred-out Great Forest, will be so afraid of a human being who is not yet an adult. As for the Titan giant ape next to it, when the crimson light shrouded it, it immediately lay down on the ground, hid its head in its arms and shivered. Behind its buttocks, it has already turned into a vast ocean. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked the Azure Bull Python and gained, shock points. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked the Titan Great Ape and gained, shock points. When the Green Bull Python and the Titan Giant Ape were shocked by the 10-year soul ring that day, a system notification sounded in Tang Ge's mind. But at this moment, he no longer has the mentality to understand these things, but focuses all his attention on the 10-year soul ring that he just inhaled into his body. To be exact, when the 10-year soul ring entered his body, Tang Ge suddenly understood. This 10-year soul ring from the giant spirit god is said to be only 10 years old, but the actual age has exceeded 30 years, approaching the 50-year limit. There were faint golden spots of light appearing in the crimson light, but they disappeared quickly. Then Tang Ge discovered that in his infinite sea of consciousness, with a complete release of the power of the 10-year-old soul ring, a piercing phantom slowly appeared. At the same time, in front of him, an illusory giant mountain also condensed out. Facing the huge mountain blocking the way, Tong Shinzuing couldn't help raising his head and let out a deafening roar, and immediately rushed over with boom and boom. In the end, this giant mountain was smashed to pieces with his fists, kicked away with his feet, and completely shattered. A soaring god in time emanated from this sky-reaching phantom, triggering Tang Ge's sea of consciousness to be full of dark clouds and thunder. But fortunately, because of the system, The phantom of the giant spirit released by this 10-year-old soul ring completely dissipated and retransformed into the purest energy after showing its supreme power. It did not cause any harm to Tang Ge. And Tang Ge felt that when the time was ripe, he also endured the shock in his heart, and immediately induced the 10-year soul ring he had just absorbed to fuse with his own martial soul mountain river Shiji map. As soon as the two were combined, the map of Shiji began to vibrate violently in the painting. As soon as a phantom stepped into it, it appeared in the center of the world, and as he raised his hands, his body began to grow bigger and bigger. And the distance between the sky and the earth also increases accordingly. In the end, this phantom completely turned into a stone pillar connecting the sky and the earth, completely separating the sky and the earth that were originally connected. At the same time, Tang Ge's body was also shaken violently, and as the map of mountains and rivers emerged, 5 dark 10,000-year soul rings also emerged. But after these 5 pitch-black soul rings, the 6th soul ring immediately released a dazzling red light as soon as it appeared. Even the pitch-black light of the first 5 10,000-year spirit rings could hardly cover them, instead they were also rendered black and red. Tang Ge sat cross-legged in the 5 black and 1 red 6 soul rings. The surging energy released by the 10-year soul ring made his soul power level rise like a rocket as soon as he broke through. I don't know how long it took before the violently fluctuating aura on Tang Ge's body returned to calm. The crimson light that spread out also shrank rapidly, and disappeared immediately after the martial soul and soul ring were absorbed into the body. Feeling the surging soul power in his body, Tang Ge woke up and didn't rush to open his eyes, but looked at his personal information first. Shocking system, host, Tang Ge, level 69 Soul Emperor, martial souls, twin martial souls, map of mountains and rivers, 4 swords of immortals, spirit ring, black, 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 red, affected by the mountains and rivers domain, can be merged into one and change any color. Soul skill, mountain and river domain, unique, currently covering a spherical area with a radius of, meters around the host. Soul spike, yin-yang wings, Mahamudra of life and death, Tai Chi sword formation, incarnation of giant spirit god, martial arts, random cloaking windhammer method. Secret of Zen character, hell smelting, heavenly god fist, physique, ancient holy body, awakening 19%, shock value 19,250. No other information has changed, but the soul power level has been raised from level 69 to level, ! And in the column of soul skills, because of the fusion of the 6th 10-year soul ring, there is another incarnation of a giant spirit god. After all, this is a 10-year soul skill, so Tang Ge couldn't help being curious, and immediately chose to use it. As the surging soul power was continuously consumed, the surrounding space shook violently, and then Tang Ge found that his field of vision began to become higher and higher after opening his eyes. In the blink of an eye, the tall tree with a height of tens of meters in the distance was directly at the same level as his line of sight. When Tang Ge looked down, he realized that it wasn't the trees getting shorter, but himself getting taller and bigger. Even the clothes on his body were torn and disappeared, and he was completely naked. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge felt a little helpless. He was afraid that he would have to get a treasure of clothes in the future, otherwise the clothes would be torn as soon as he transformed. This affects his personal image too much? But fortunately, there is no one else here except for the 2 soul beasts. Tang Ge didn't feel embarrassed, and immediately stood up from the ground. The entire ground began to tremble violently as he got up. Finally, when Tang Ge stood up completely, his height was astonishingly, meters. The huge lake not far away, which was rippling, suddenly became smaller in front of his eyes. Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 215. Wait, where is my lake? After activating the 6th soul skill giant spirit god incarnation, Tang Ge, who became 100 meters tall, experienced the world through the eyes of the tall man for the first time. He looked around, and the huge lake that could have accommodated the azure bull python was no longer so huge. The dense trees in the core area of the starred-out Great Forest can be seen even more, and a soul beast that is scared away by Tang Ge's breath is like an ant. Looking at these soul beasts and feeling the surging power in his body, Tang Ge seemed to be looking at ants. His face was indifferent, and his heart was full of contempt. Even if there were a few breaths of spirit beasts over 10,000 years old in the distance, Tang Ge felt like ants, and couldn't arouse the slightest interest at all. He knew that he was influenced by the incarnation of the giant spirit god. After all, The giant spirit god itself is a powerful god. But Tang Ge didn't resist, but rather enjoyed this feeling a little bit. Most importantly, feeling the terrifying power brought by the incarnation of the giant spirit god, the scene of the phantom smashing the mountain with its fists and feet when the soul ring was fused involuntarily appeared in his mind. Then, Tang Ge felt an urge to try the same. What's more, after merging the avatar of the giant spirit, his ancient holy body power also blessed the avatar. So as his eyes swept around, when he saw a cone-shaped mountain in the distance, Tang Ge immediately raised his feet and walked over quickly. Boom, 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 boom. As the ground trembled violently, Tang Ge, who was, meters tall, was tens of meters away every time he took a step. Wherever he went, he left footprints several meters deep hundreds of meters away. When Tang Ge, who was practicing cultivation, suddenly turned into a, meter giant, no matter whether it was the azure bull python or the titan giant ape, his eyes stared round and round. What happened? How did this human become so big all of a sudden? The hearts of the two soul beasts were filled with shock. Especially the titan giant ape, who was only a dozen meters tall, was very confident in himself, but looking at Tang Ge, who was much bigger than himself, his self-confidence instantly collapsed. It feels that the current self may be stepped on by the other party and die. Thinking this way, the two soul beasts saw Tang Ge, who had turned into a, meter-tall giant again, and suddenly started running, heading straight for a mountain in the distance. They couldn't help but wonder in their hearts, what kind of moth is this human being going to make? Tang Ge, who was running, heard two system notification sounds in his mind one after another, and finally showed a smile on his originally indifferent expression. Immediately he quickened his pace again. However, after a dozen or so breaths passed, Tang Ge appeared in front of a conical mountain several miles away from the Great Lake. This conical mountain is pointed upwards and is 1,000 meters high. There are many mountains on the mountain, and the trees are lush. The bottom of the mountain is connected with the ground and is inseparable. Tang Ge stood in front of it and suddenly became shorter. But looking at this cone-shaped mountain with a height of, meters, Tang Ge took another deep breath, and suddenly stretched out his hands as if hugging someone, and hugged it directly into his arms. Although the length of his arms is not enough to fully embrace the mountain, but the 10 fingers of both hands placed on both sides of the mountain clasped hard. Accompanied by the breaking sound of, Tang Ge thrust all his fingers into the rock wall abruptly. At last, when the terrifying power possessed by the incarnation of the giant spirit god combined with the ancient holy body and burst out instantly, he suddenly opened his mouth and roared. Get up, rumble, rumble. Accompanied by the deafening roar, the ground nearby began to vibrate violently as if a magnitude, earthquake had occurred. With a cone-shaped mountain as the center, a series of cobweb-like cracks appeared and spread rapidly towards the surroundings. The cracks became bigger and bigger, and the ground began to collapse. As the smoke and dust billowed in all directions, stretches of woods were implicated and sank into the ground along with the collapsed ground, and were quickly buried by the influx of soil. Because of the force, Tang Ge's slightly spread feet stepped on 2 deep pits on the ground. But following his roar, a wave of air caused by the explosion of extreme power suddenly rushed in all directions. Even more terrifying, the 1,000-meter-high mountain held in his arms actually began to separate from the ground bit by bit as his arms moved upwards, and the potholes on the ground became bigger and bigger. In the end, this 1,000-meter-high mountain was completely pulled out of the ground by Tang Ge. Accompanied by the loud sound of boom and boom, countless gravels collapsed, instantly forming a deep pit with a radius of, meters in the place where the mountain was originally located. There were also deep cracks that crisscrossed all around. At this time, after Tang Ge, who was incarnated as a giant spirit god, hugged and lifted the 1,000-meter mountain, even though he was unparalleled in strength, he couldn't help but feel a burst of difficulty. If you look carefully, you can find that sweat has started to protrude from his forehead, and the surging soul power in his body is also being consumed rapidly. But listening to the 2 system prompts that reappeared in his mind, Tang Ge was still very satisfied. Then, after he glanced around, he left the place with a cone-shaped mountain in his arms, and walked towards the huge dark blue lake in the distance step by step. The earth boom and boom kept trembling. Following the trembling sound, the azure bull python and titan giant ape who were hiding hundreds of meters away were even more terrified, staring blankly at Tang Ge, who pulled the mountain from the ground and embraced it in his arms. At this moment, they suddenly began to doubt, is this human really a human? Boom. After a while, A deafening loud noise sounded again, which seemed to be mixed with strange noises of crash clatter. A drizzle fell from the sky. The rain was sticking to their bodies, and the azure bull python and titan giant ape who were in a daze shook their heads and woke up instantly. Then they saw that their feet had been submerged by water more than 1 meter high at some point, and it was still spreading outward, and there was a familiar smell in the water. Daming, in the water, you smell, the titan giant ape, who had never spoken, suddenly made a muffled sound. My taste? Hearing the words of the titan giant ape, the azure bull python was a little puzzled, but then it seemed to think of something, and suddenly flew towards its own habitat recklessly. In the blink of an eye, the azure bull python returned to a place tens of meters away from the giant lake. The first thing that catches its eyes is the, meter tall Tang Ge, and the 1,000-meter high mountain that has been relocated to the ground. It seems that it was here in the first place and many more. Where is my lake? Finally, when he saw a huge mud pit emerging from the 1,000-meter mountain as the center, the eyes of the azure bull python widened. End of this chapter. Chapter 216. For the sake of evolution, what is the face? Seeing the stunned expression on the sky blue cow python, Tang Ge, who was deified by the giant spirit, couldn't help but smile, and said, Brother New, I think your lake is quite monotonous, so I brought you a mountain to dress it up. Dress up, you don't mind? Help my lake dress up? Feel sorry. I don't need azure bull python. Hearing Tang Ge's words, King Niuban's heart twitched suddenly after he came back to his senses. But thinking of the scene of the other party's overwhelming strength just now, how could it dare to say this kind of thought? It could only force a smile on its face. Thank you Tang Xiaoyao, and Tang Xiaoyao released the mountain like this, which made the whole lake more lively. It turns out Brother Niu thinks so too. With the approval of King Niubag, Tang Ge's eyes lit up, and he said excitedly, and I also thought about it for Brother Niu. In the future, you can completely coil your whole body on that mountain. Mighty and domineering, paralysis. I stay in the lake to rest, isn't it delicious? Why should it be coiled on the mountain? Still mighty and domineering? I bother. This hateful bad human being. Sky Blue Bull Python said viciously in his heart. But it still nodded very cooperatively on the surface. Xiao Tang is right, I can try this method of rest in the future, but look at my lake. Speaking of this, looking at the lake that has turned into a big mud pit, the azure bull python suddenly became tangled. With so much mud, wouldn't it turn into a mud cow python if it fell? Tang Ge felt the soul power in his body that was almost bottoming out, and immediately released the sixth soul skill giant spirit god incarnation, and returned to his normal height. However, after experiencing the strengthening the mountain just now, he already has a general understanding of his current strength. Without changing shape, Tang Ge felt that with his surging soul power and the first 5 soul skills, no soul master below Contra was his opponent. If he only used the ancient saint physique, he could crush the title Douluo now. But if he uses the ancient sacred body while transforming, even if peerless Douluo comes, Tang Ge can use his fists to teach him how to be a human being. So even if he came into contact with the incarnation of the giant spirit god at this moment, with a change of mentality, when Tang Ge looked at the azure bull python again, he suddenly felt that the emperor of the starred-out great forest was just like this. He couldn't help smiling and waving his hands, saying, Brother New, can the trouble be settled? I'm too tired to talk to you with my head up like this. If in the past, if a human dared to talk to him like this, the azure bull python would definitely reward the other party with a tail to the face without hesitation, but now, forget it, the beast is under the eaves and has to bow its head. After sighing secretly in his heart, the azure bull python obediently flew down to the ground, and lowered his head as much as possible to be as tall as Tang Ge. As for the mud on the ground, it doesn't care too much now. Seeing this scene, Tang Ge was very satisfied. He continued the topic mentioned by King Niuban, and said, Brother New, you don't have to worry about this lake, the overflowing lake water will flow back by itself in a short time. So during this period, I can only wrong Brother New. But didn't I say it before, I happen to have some gifts for you after I break through. And now I can take out these gifts. This can be regarded as a little return gift for me to occupy your precious land for cultivation. And return gift, real or fake? Hearing Tang Ge's words, a pair of huge eyes of King Niuban couldn't help but a hint of suspicion flashed, and there was also a hint of anticipation. But thinking about gifts, what humans like to say most is polite words. Sometimes it is not true to say that gifts are given. If the other party took it seriously, it would be too stupid. So after hesitating for a while, Sky Blue Bull Python still shook his head and said, "Forget about the gift, brother, you really don't want it." Tang Ge frowned, and while chuckling, there were already 2 exquisite small porcelain bottles in his outstretched right hand. And one of the small porcelain bottles has been opened, and as the breeze blows, a unique smell suddenly floats out of the bottle. The moment this smell floated into the nose, the body of the Azure Bull Python, who didn't care about it at first, trembled, and a pair of huge eyes suddenly widened. It stared at the open porcelain bottle in Singer Tang. Unbelievable that it was the smell just now that gave it an uncontrollable strong desire to swallow it. This aura even made the Azure Bull Python feel fluctuations in his blood that hadn't progressed for a long time. You must know that after 10 years of soul beast cultivation, there are 2 directions to choose. One of the directions is to shed the body of the soul beast and transform into human form, and start to practice again from the very beginning of the soul warrior like a human being. The advantage of this is that after the soul beast transforms into a human being, it can have more room for improvement. It is even very possible to become a god. In addition, another direction of the soul beast is to continue to cultivate as a soul beast, but it will only have a 1,000-year lifespan, and after that, every 10 years of cultivation will experience a thunder disaster. Azure Bull Python and Titan Giant Ape are the second direction chosen. In addition to other reasons for their choice, they also want to further their bloodline and reach a higher level among soul beasts. It's a pity that this road is doomed to be difficult and bumpy, and it is difficult to go on from beginning to end. It has been a long time since the Azure Neubiji has felt much change in its own strength. But just now, a trace of breath wafted out of the inconspicuous small porcelain bottle that the human being took out in front of him, unexpectedly made its blood fluctuate. For a moment, the voice of the Azure Bull Python couldn't help trembling. "Tang. Xiao Tang, what is this in your hand? Have you smelled it? Can you feel the boiling of your blood?" This is the gift I want to give you. It contains a kind of natural treasure called Douluo. And in addition to this bottle of Emperor liquid, I originally planned to give you another transformation pill that can switch back and forth between the soul beast and the human body at any time. But since you don't want them, I'd better put them all away. As he said that, Tang Ge sighed, pretending to cover the porcelain bottle in his hand and put it away. Seeing this, the Azure Bull Python immediately became panicked. "Don't. Tang Xiao." Just at this moment, the Titan Giant Ape who had been staying in the distance seemed to be attracted by the breath just now, and slowly approached on tiptoe. When the Azure Neubog, who didn't know what to do, saw this bastard, a thought suddenly popped up uncontrollably in his heart. Then he hurriedly stopped Tang Ge, who was about to put away the gift. "Brother Tang's gift, if my old cow refuses, it will be too ignorant. So I will accept this gift no matter what. And Brother Tang, haven't you been looking for a mount? I don't think Brother Tang should look for it anymore. Erming is just right, having it with you, Brother Tang, not to mention saving worry and effort. The most important thing is that you will have more face when you go out no matter where you go. Brother Tang, Lao Niu, ask you to accept Erming. I believe that Erming is also very willing." At the end of the speech, Xian King Niuban suddenly became sincere, and looked at Tang Ge expectantly. "I am the only one at work today, and I am exhausted, so I only have this one today, and I will try to make up for it tomorrow." End of this chapter. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217 Transformation, Jialong. If it is said that people are invincible when they are cheap, then once soul beasts become cheap, they are really unparalleled in the world. Tang Ge really didn't expect Xian King Niuban to say these words in such a shameless way, and was completely shown off by the other party's coquettish manipulation. As for the Titan Giant Ape who sneaked back just now, it was even more careless for a moment, and with a plop, both knees immediately knelt on the ground. Its heavy body hit the ground, and the ground trembled slightly. But when looking at the Azure Bull Python, the Titan Giant Ape was full of dissatisfaction, and finally couldn't help but let out a low buzzing sound. "Daming, you've turned bad. If Miss Xiao Wu finds out, she will never talk to you again." Hearing what the Titan Great Ape said, the Azure Bull Python couldn't help being embarrassed. But immediately its face became stern, and it pretended to be stern and said, What do you know? I'm doing this for your own good, don't talk nonsense," and at the same time kept showing color to the giant ape. The giant ape titan was even more angry when he heard this. "Anyway, I don't care. I won't be a mount. If you want to be yourself, it's useless even if you squeeze your eyes out. What's the matter with me being a mount? Anyway, after I can transform, I can go out with Brother Tang to find Sister Xiao, so you can stay here by yourself." Xian King Niuban was forced into a hurry, so he could only use his trump card. Sure enough, as soon as it said this, the face of the giant ape changed suddenly. It couldn't help looking at Tang Ge, who was watching the show, and asked in a deep voice, "Human, will you really take gaming to find Miss Xiao?" Listening to the conversation between the two soul beasts in front of him, Tang Ge felt really funny. Sure enough, no matter if it is a human being or a soul beast, no matter how powerful they are still hard to pass the beauty test. So even the Titan giant ape, who was very resistant at first, after seeing Tang Ge, nodded to confirm, chose to bow his head with a tangled face, gritted his teeth. It was very depressed and said, "Human, as long as you can take me to Miss Xiao Wu, I will agree to be your mount. However, I also want the good-smelling thing in the bottle in your hand." Regarding the compromise made by the Titan giant ape, even though the Azure Bull Python felt distressed, he was very pleased. In its view, if it can get the treasure that can promote the evolution of the bloodline in Tang Singer, so what if it is a mount? It's not just a change of identity. Not to mention, for the sake of evolution, what is the face? Just throw it away. Besides, the Azure Niuban can also tell that Tang Ge is different from other humans. Not only is this young man incredibly powerful, he also doesn't kill soul beasts like other human soul masters. After all, the number of 10-year-old soul beasts is rare. If a human being sees it and the Titan great ape, his first thought will definitely be to kill him to obtain a soul ring. But Tang Ge didn't do this when he came here twice. On the contrary, when he treated the Azure Bull Python and the Titan giant ape, he treated them more like friends. Otherwise, which human would dare to entrust the safety to two soul beasts to take care of them, while practicing under the eyes of the soul beasts? If you don't recognize this, how could it be possible for the Sky Blue Bull Python to betray his relative who has lived with it for countless years for the sake of a treasure? It's just that the Titan giant ape's brain is too stupid to see the truth in it, and everything can only make the Azure Bull Python, who is both a father and a mother, worry about it. In this way, the Azure Bull Python breathed a sigh of relief until the Titan giant ape completely bowed its head. At this time, Tang Ge also smiled and spoke again. "The treasures in these two small bottles in my hand are gifts for Brother Niu, and I can't give them to you, but there are other gifts for you. Brother Niu, do you still want these two gifts?" "Nonsense. I said so many shameless things just now, isn't it because of these two gifts?" Hearing Tang Ge's question, Xian King Niuban was afraid that the other party would regret it, so he hurriedly nodded and said, "Yes. Of course, take it." Tang Ge didn't talk nonsense anymore, and directly threw the covered porcelain bottle in his hand. The Sky Blue Bull Python was startled, and immediately used a gust of wind to quickly wrap the two porcelain bottles, and then slowly sent them to him. For transformation pill, it doesn't expect too much. After all, if you wanted to change your person, you would have done so long ago, and it wouldn't be delayed until now. On the contrary, the treasure that could emit that kind of smell in the other porcelain bottle made the big heart of the Azure Bull Python thump and thump start beating violently. It couldn't help looking at Tang Ge, and said expectantly, "Can I take it now? Everything is given to you. Whether you need it or not is your own business. Tell me what you want to say. But let me remind you first, if the Deliri and transformation pill are used together, the effect will be even better." Hearing Xian King Niuban's inquiry, Tang Ge reminded with a smile. Combining the two treasures? Regarding Tang Ge's proposal, Xian King Niuban was slightly taken aback. However, he did not doubt what the other party said, and after nodding, he no longer endured the hunger and thirst in his patience. As soon as he opened the porcelain bottle containing Emperor ointment, he raised his head and swallowed the liquid inside in one gulp. Although the amount of Emperor liquid is not much, the essence of heaven and earth contained in it is extremely rich. Not long after the Sky Blue Bull Python swallowed it, the blood in its body was completely stimulated and exploded, and the terrifying power of wind and thunder was released from it. All of a sudden, the surrounding wind suddenly rose, and the thunder flickered. Faced with this situation, Tang Ge Titan Giant Ape immediately retreated 100 meters away. under their eyes full of curiosity and anticipation. As time went by, the wind and thunder power around the azure bull python became more and more intense, almost completely submerging it. A palpitating aura continued to emanate from it. The soul beasts who were frightened and fled around because of Tang Ge's breakthrough had just calmed down, and this breath came over again. Immediately, the soul beasts began to flee further away in a panic. Even the human soul masters who were active on the outskirts of the starred-out Great Forest felt the sudden terrifying aura in the core area, and their expressions changed one after another. Coupled with the sudden riot of nearby soul beasts, these human soul masters had to give up hunting and retreat towards the forest. In this regard, Tang Ge, who had been staying in the core area, naturally didn't know it. At the moment, his attention was all on the wind, thunder and light group 100 meters away. When the surging energy released by Emperor Little Eye was completely absorbed, a dragon chant suddenly sounded. Hold head high. Immediately afterwards, the wind and thunder light group exploded directly, and a figure of blue light soared straight up, flying hundreds of meters into the air in an instant. Amidst the dark clouds rolling, a gigantic head suddenly protruded from it. Seeing this scene, the Titan giant ape couldn't help but widen his eyes, and said blankly, "Duh. Daming, did it become a dragon? To be precise, it should be a flood dragon." Hearing the words of the Titan great ape, Tang Ge also looked at the head protruding from the dark clouds high in the sky, and replied with a smile, "End of this chapter." Chapter 218. Can I eat now? Hundreds of meters in the air. Dark clouds billowed, thunder roared, and a gigantic head gradually appeared, followed by a blue body tens of meters long and covered with dense scales. On its abdomen, there are two sharp claws. It looks like a real dragon, but because it has no horns, it is actually a dragon. The flood dragon that suddenly appeared at this moment was the azure bull python that had just taken Douluo. Because its blood was close to that of a flood dragon, so it evolved successfully so quickly. In addition, it has mastered the power of wind and thunder. Even a flood dragon can fly in the air. Moreover, once it evolved into a flood dragon, the azure bull python even mastered the power of moving clouds and spreading rain. Being high in the sky, when seeing the huge dry lake below, a gleam of light flashed in its majestic eyes, and immediately the huge body of the flood dragon stirred. Billowing dark clouds gathered and appeared over the giant lake in the blink of an eye. The wind is blowing everywhere. Thunder explodes. Immediately afterwards, the torrential rain gushed out of the dark clouds, like a waterfall falling from 9 days, covering the entire giant lake with a crash. Seeing this, Tang Ge frowned, and couldn't help but think to himself, "Yo, this has just evolved into a dragon, and started to fill the lake and build the sea with clouds and rain?" On the side, the Titan great ape watched with enthusiasm. Then it couldn't help turning its head and shifting its gaze to Tang Ge, scratching its head like a child and saying in embarrassment, "Then, that Tang, brother Tang, my gift, no hurry." "No hurry." Tang Ge smiled and shook his head. The giant ape titan wanted to jump anxiously, but thinking of the horror of the human being in front of him, he could only wait obediently in resentment. After a while, as the downpour stopped, coupled with the backflow of the previous overflow, the originally dry lake suddenly returned to its former appearance. But in its central area, there is an extra mountain. There are still a lot of flowers, plants and trees on the mountain peak, which looks like a small island in the lake. Coupled with the clouds and mist after the rain, against the dark blue lake water, it feels a bit like a fairyland. High in the sky, the azure bull python was panting slightly because of overdigestion just after the clouds spread the rain. However, when he saw that his residence was not only restored, but also more beautiful than before, his majestic face suddenly showed satisfaction. Immediately after, the huge dragon's body of the sky blue bull python danced in midair, and rushed downwards. The extreme speed made it directly transform into a cyan figure. Puff, puff and puff sounded in the air. But when the cyan figure was about to hit the ground, it stopped instantly from movement and stillness, and then turned into a naked middle-aged strong man and landed on the ground. Seeing the strong man without clothes, Tang Ge seemed to think of something, and his complexion changed suddenly. Muzz. After talking for such a long time, I even forgot that I didn't wear clothes. Although there were only two soul beasts in front of him, Tang Ge felt his face burn when he thought that such an important matter had been forgotten by him. He turned around without hesitation, and took out a piece of clothing from the system space and put it on himself. At the same time, he threw a piece of clothing to the middle-aged strong man behind him. "Brother Niu, the clothes don't fit you well, so you can wear them first. Thank you, Brother Tang. Although he thought it was okay not to wear clothes, the middle-aged strong man, Xianqing Niuban, thanked Tang Ge and put the clothes on himself clumsily. It's just that after he put it on, the original long clothes and trousers suddenly turned into short clothes and shorts, which were so stretched that they were about to be torn because they were too thin. When Tang Ge put on his clothes and turned around again, he almost couldn't help laughing when he saw the sky blue cow python. But he still endured it, nodded solemnly, and praised, "Brother Ni really looks more powerful and domineering in this suit." Really, the eyes of the Azure Nuban, who was still feeling uncomfortable at first, lit up when he heard Tang Ge's words. After getting Tang Ge's confirmation, he no longer resisted the discomfort of wearing clothes. He couldn't help but take a deep breath, and when he looked at Tang Ge again, his face was full of solemnity. "This time I can realize my long-standing wish to advance my bloodline to a flood dragon, all thanks to Brother Tang. According to what you human beings say, if Brother Tang needs help with anything in the future, even if I, Ming, go down the mountain of swords and go down into the sea of fire, I will definitely help Brother Tang to complete it." These are the words from the sky blue bull python's heart. Because after taking the natural treasure called Douluo, he realized its preciousness, and realized that he already owed Tang Ge a great favor. Besides that, the transformation pill is also extraordinary. Just because of taking it, coupled with the energy of Emperor Ointment, he was able to successfully transform into a human body after evolving into a flood dragon. Not only did his own strength not decrease, but he was on the verge of entering another 20 years of cultivation. More importantly, the Azure Bull Python can clearly feel that he can completely switch from a human body to a dragon's real body in a single thought, which is something that other transformed soul beasts are completely unable to do. For a moment, Xianqing Niuban was glad that he met Tang Ge, but also secretly felt sorry for Xiao Wu, who had lost her spirit beast body and turned into a human body. Tang Ge shook his head with a smile when he heard Xianqing Niuban's words. "It's fine to go up the mountain of swords and down to the sea of fire, as long as it's okay. I can become a real dragon and carry me in the sky to experience the feeling of flying a dragon." Azure Bull Python, he suddenly felt that he might never get back the face he lost before. But at this moment, the Titan giant ape who was staying next to him was eager to speak. "Tang, Brother Tang, if you let Daming be your mount, then what will I do?" It obviously said this because it was afraid that Tang Ge would not give it a gift because it had found a more powerful and domineering mount. As for the matter of resisting being a mount, compared to becoming a flood dragon, being a mount is nothing. At this time, the Titan giant ape fully understood the good intentions of the Azure Bull Python, and not only regretted why it didn't open up before the direct attack. Seeing the anxious look of the giant ape scratching his head, Tang Ge suddenly felt that the treasure really fit this guy. So he wasn't trying to whet the opponent's appetite, and took out a red fruit from the system space with a smile. As soon as the fruit comes out, it also exudes a strong fragrance. Although the sky blue bull python thought it smelled good, it didn't have the urge to devour it like Wendy's, so it just looked at it curiously. But the Titan giant ape became excited all of a sudden. "Brother Tang, I don't have the Emperor's juice, and I don't have the transformation pill, but this fruit is quite suitable for you. It is a bloodline fruit, which came from your ancestor's golden-eyed stone ape," Tang Ge explained with a smile. "The bloodline fruit of the golden-eyed stone ape?" Hearing Tang Ge's explanation, Titan giant ape was a little confused, but when he heard that it belonged to his ancestors, he felt amazing. So it couldn't wait to say, "Then, can I eat it now?" End of this chapter. Chapter 219, Opening the Gate of the Heavens. Seeing the impatient appearance of the Titan great ape, the Azure Bull Python, who is a coming beast, can understand the other party's mood at the moment. After all, it is about the evolution of the bloodline, and no one can keep calm. Tang Ge can naturally understand. So he smiled and nodded, "Of course, but this bloodline fruit is different from Douluo and transformation pill, and it may take a long time for you to complete the bloodline evolution after taking it. But after all, I haven't used this thing before, so if you don't know the situation, you'd better be mentally prepared." Oh, hearing Tang Ge's words, Titan giant ape couldn't help nodding. It's just that it didn't take any psychological preparations to heart at all, and all its thoughts were on the blood fruit and Singer Tang. Regarding this, Tang Ge didn't say anything more, and immediately threw the blood fruit to the Titan giant ape. As soon as he got the bloodline fruit, the giant ape titan was so excited that he ran 100 meters away, as if he would be robbed by someone. He quickly ate it. Immediately, Tang Ge and King Niuban saw this guy suddenly fell to the ground, and his whole body twitched uncontrollably. There was a hint of worry in the eyes of the Azure Bull Python. Tang Ge smiled and said, "It's okay, it will be fine if you twitch for a while. It's just that you stay here and watch it, and I will go to your island to practice in seclusion for a while." After finishing speaking, he soared into the sky and flew directly towards the high mountain in the middle of the huge lake. Sky Blue Niubag watched Tang Ge leave, and only looked away after the figure of the other party completely disappeared in the jungle on the mountain. Then he went directly to the side of the Titan giant ape, and after recovering behind Giant Long Zhen, he lay prone on the ground and began to wait quietly. Here, there are two terrifying auras of 10-year-old soul beasts, and no human or soul beast dares to approach them. In a lake, in a jungle on a mountain peak. As soon as Tang Ge came here, he sat cross-legged on the ground and said silently in his heart, "Use the armor of the gods, use the cut-off finger." Immediately, with the help of the system, the two magic spells that he had drawn and placed in the system space directly turned into golden light and poured into his mind. Then, the information about these two supernatural powers was quickly displayed. Battle Robe of the Gods, the defensive method of the God Elephant suppressing prison force. After use, it can form a layer of golden battle robe, praised by the gods, and all evil will not invade. Cutting the sky finger, the unique technique from the Void Sutra, with one finger pointing out, it shoots out a sky-high divine light, just like a few real dragons waving their tails, intersecting together, can cut off the mountains and cut off the sky. Under the constant impact of these information, Tang Ge also quickly began to control the two supernatural powers. I don't know how long it took, when he opened his eyes again. Accompanied by the vibration of the surrounding space, as if the gods were singing, there was a majestic divine sound. Immediately after, a dazzling golden light appeared, covering Tang Ge in an instant, gradually forming a layer of golden battle robe. For a moment, Tang Ge, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, had a sacred and inviolable aura. If Jinringsu saw Tang Ge's appearance here, she would probably be shocked again. The sacred aura on the other party's body was even richer and purer than that of her spirit angel. At this time, at the moment when the golden battle robe was condensed, Tang Ge raised his hand and pointed in the air suddenly. Cut off the finger to start. The soul power in the body was converted into mana to drive the sky-cutting finger, and it was consumed continuously in an instant. When counting to the moment when the divine light burst out from the fingertips and formed a dragon scissors in the sky, Tang Ge, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he appeared directly under the heaven-cutting finger he had used him. Immediately, with a sound of space concussion, the flood dragon scissors formed by Ji Xianzi ruthlessly cut Tang Ge's body. The terrifying power erupted, directly causing the gods' battle robes covering Tang Ge to release a dazzling light. At that moment, the sound of the gods singing made Tang Ge's consciousness go into trance. But fortunately, no matter whether it is the heavenly cutting finger or the battle robe of the gods, they are all supernatural powers he used himself. So at this moment of trance, Tang Ge did not receive other attacks. After he came to his senses, he instantly used the word Zing to get out of the attacking range of Ji Xianzi. After a while, the dragon scissors formed by the Xianxian finger disappeared slowly because they lost the attack target. And Tang Ge also dissipated the battle robes of the gods that were dimmed but not broken even after being attacked. So it turns out that when the spear and the shield are both very strong, no one can do anything to anyone in a short time. However, Tang Ge was very satisfied with the power of Xianzi and the battle robes of the gods. Especially when the battle robes of the gods are under attack, they will release the chants of the gods while defending to disturb the enemy's mind. Even if the influence time is not long, it is enough to decide the battle situation. It's just that these two supernatural powers are too advanced, and they are still too reluctant for Tang Ge, who activates them through soul power. With his current level 69 soul power, he might not be able to use it many times. It seems that we have to take the ancient holy body one step further as soon as possible, and then start the cultivation of the sky shrouding method. Thinking of this, Tang Ge murmured to himself. Immediately, he didn't do anything else, but sat cross-legged again and began to adjust his state. As time went by, the day passed without knowing it. In the early morning of the next day, when the first ray of sunlight fell from the rising sun, Tang Ge, who had been practicing, finally opened his eyes again. Feeling that his physical condition had been completely restored to its peak, his eyes flashed, and with a wave of his right hand, A pitch-black door like a black hole suddenly appeared 3 meters away. As soon as the pitch-black portal appeared, the surrounding space became distorted. Countless lights were continuously swallowed into the pitch-black portal. This is the gate of the heavens. It's just that because it hasn't been opened yet, facing the dark gate of the heavens, Tang Ge can feel a strong sense of palpitation. It seemed that as soon as he stepped in, he would be torn to pieces. But Tang Ge didn't hesitate. And still recited silently in his heart. Use the world coordinates of the world, and use the timeline of the world to pull the coffin in 9 dragons. Ding dong, the world coordinates of Zishan have been used successfully, and the timeline of the 9 dragons pulling the coffin has been successfully located from the long river of time. It is detected that the host has the gate of the heavens, and all the conditions are met. Do you choose to open the gate of the heavens immediately? Suddenly, the system's prompt sounded in Tang Ge's mind. Tang Ge nodded. Open the gate of the heavens immediately, As soon as he finished speaking, bursts of colorful light suddenly shot out from the original extremely dark gate of the heavens 3 meters away, and then gradually condensed into a bridge of colorful light that went straight to the depths. Beyond the light bridge, there is a constantly fluctuating river of time and space, which is both beautiful and incomparably weird. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 220, The Top of Mount Tai, Kowloon pulls the coffin. Looking at the gate of the heavens that had been opened in front of him, Tang Ge's eyes were full of shock, and he was even more grateful that he didn't use up the 10,000 Worlds Traversing Talisman. Obviously, compared with the gate of the heavens, the 10,000 Worlds Traversing Talisman is very random. It would be fine if the time travel was successful after using it, but if it failed, it would probably fall directly into the turbulent flow of time and space, and then be torn to pieces. So, let's leave that thing to the enemy. Thinking of this, Tang Ge took a deep breath, got up and walked towards the gate of the heavens. When he came to the gate of the heavens and looked at the scene inside the gate closely, he could feel the mystery of time and space even more, as if a great horror was hidden inside. At this time, the system beep sounded again. Ding dong, congratulations to the host. You have successfully opened the gate of the heavens. The gate of the heavens can only be used once, and the duration is until the host returns to this world next time. Friendly reminder, after system adjustment, the time ratio between Zishan World and Douluo World is 1:1. Please feel at ease to experience this journey of 10,000 worlds. Yo. I didn't expect the system to have such a caring side. Hearing the system prompt, Tang Ge frowned, and couldn't help showing surprise on his face. At the same time, he also breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, when he chose to go to the Shrouding World, Tang Ge was worried about the time between the two worlds. If he had only been there for 2 days, it would be 1,000 years later, and it would be over. After all, compared with the Shrouding World, the Douluo World is where he grew up. Whether it is Yujin, Ningrongrong, Zuzhuking or Jinring Su, they are all waiting for him to cherish them slowly in the future, and they cannot let down the beauties for the sake of strength. But fortunately, the system is awesome. The 1:1 time ratio is enough for Tang Ge to complete what he wants to do after traveling to the Shrouding World, and it will not delay the plot half a year later. Completely kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Thinking of this, Tang Ge stopped hesitating completely, took a deep breath and walked directly into the gate of the heavens. Then a colorful light flashed, and his figure disappeared instantly. The gate of the heavens also slowly disappeared. Beyond the giant lake, Daming, who had turned into a dragon, was guarding the Titan giant ape, who was in the process of blood transmutation, and he naturally felt the violent fluctuations on the mountain peaks and the lake just now. But because he knew Tang Ge was on it, he didn't care. But at this moment, when Daming went to perceive the situation on the mountain again, he was surprised to find that Tang Ge's aura was gone, the kind that didn't exist at all. Could it be that he left quietly? Puzzled in his heart, Daming directly soared into the sky as a flood dragon, appearing in the sky above the giant peak in the lake. His huge eyes looked down through the clouds like beams of light. Nothing could block his sight, and he could see the entire giant peak at once. But the result? It's really gone. Daming's eyes revealed a touch of disbelief. It's hard to imagine how a living person could just disappear for no reason. Forget it, let's go. In the end, he really couldn't figure out the reason, so Daming stopped thinking about it, and returned to the side of the Titan Great Ape. The most important thing now is to wait for the Titan Giant Ape to evolve the bloodline successfully. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you shocked Daming and gained, Shock points. With the sudden sound of the system's sound, Tang Ge's body in a trance suddenly shook, and he broke free from the darkness suddenly. When he opened his eyes again, he was shocked to find that he was falling rapidly from a high altitude. Tang Ge, who was so frightened that he just came back to his senses, hastily mobilized the soul power in his body to use the yin-yang wings, and immediately stopped the falling trend and stopped in midair. But then he discovered that the surging soul power that had already reached level 69 seemed to have weakened a lot, and it seemed to be under great suppression. Could it be that the crossing has been successful? Just thinking of this, the system prompt sound appeared in Tang Ge's mind again. Congratulations to the host for coming to the world of shrouding the sky, the top of Mount Tai. The portal of the gate of the heavens will automatically enter the host's body, and the host can activate it at any time to return to the world of Douluo. The time travel was really successful. Tang Ge couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he heard the system prompt. To be honest, he really didn't expect that even if he traveled through time and space through the gate of the heavens, he would experience the uncomfortable feeling of insanity. Although it didn't last long, but Tang Ge recalled that feeling again, and it seemed like a year. If it is not necessary, he really does not want to experience it again. What's more, the gate of the heavens is too unreliable. The exit on this Haitian world side actually appeared in midair. Fortunately, the user is Tang Ge. If you change it to one that can't fly, wouldn't you be thrown to death just after crossing over? Traveling is risky. Be careful when crossing. Sure enough, senior traveler is not deceiving me. After thinking about it like this for a while, Tang Ge put away his thoughts and looked down. Suddenly, a majestic mountain range came into his eyes. One of the high mountains rises from the ground and goes straight into the sky, which is extremely majestic under the mountains. Thousands of buildings are like ants, and the galloping yellow river turns into lion. Is this Mount Tai? Thinking of the content of the system prompt just now, Tang Ge couldn't help revealing a complicated look in his eyes. He knew that although the mountains and rivers he saw in front of him were exactly the same as in his memory, it would be very difficult for him to return to the place in his memory. And there is nothing worth nostalgic people and things in that place. That's right, there's nothing to miss. After muttering to himself like this, Tang Ge's mood suddenly regained his composure. Fortunately, at this time, the tourists on the Jade Emperor peak of Mount Tai below were busy taking pictures and other things, and Tang Ge was floating in an inconspicuous place, so no one noticed him. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Tang Ge dived into an afterimage and flew down. When he landed on the top of Mount Tai Jade Emperor Peak, because he didn't know when the plot of Kowloon pulling the coffin would start, he planned to wander around on this mountain. It's just that Tang Ge didn't expect it. He had just walked a few steps, as if he felt something, his face suddenly changed and he looked up at the sky. High in the blue sky. First a few black dots appeared, then the black dots grew bigger and bigger, and finally revealed its true colors. It turned out to be 9 huge dragon corpses. Behind the 9 giant dragon corpses was an ancient bronze coffin, which fell from the sky like a wind and thunder, and slammed down heavily towards the top of Mount Tai with a roar. Seeing that the legendary dragon actually appeared in reality, the tourists who were playing on the mountain couldn't help but widen their eyes, revealing incredible colors in their eyes. Even out of shock, they held their breath involuntarily. All of a sudden, on the top of Mount Tai, there were only waves of violent air vibrations of getting closer and closer. Tang Ge also looked up at the scene high in the sky, but while shocked, he was also full of anticipation. The top of Mount Tai. Kowloon pulls the coffin. The plot finally begins. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 221. I'm only 13 years old. Because of the appearance of the legendary dragon, the tourists on the mountain fell into a sluggish state involuntarily. But as the sound of air vibrations got closer and closer, even huge shadows were cast down, making the originally bright mountain top instantly dark. These days tourists finally came back to their senses, and bursts of exclamations burst out immediately. Everyone was frightened like crazy and started to run around, crying and shouting, looking for a place to hide, trying to avoid the huge dragon corpse that fell straight down from the sky. But it's a pity that the 9 huge dragon corpses didn't give these tourists time to hide, and they pulled a copper coffin and slammed into the top of the Jade Emperor. Rumble. Rumble. Accompanied by the deafening loud noise, as if the sky had collapsed, a large number of buildings were suddenly shaken and collapsed. The tourists who just hid in the building were instantly buried in it. And more tourists nearby were hit by the cracked and splashed stones on the ground, and their heads were bleeding directly, screaming in pain. The dragon corpse is really too big. Coupled with the fact that they brought the bronze coffins down from the sky, even the Jade Emperor Peak on Mount Tai, which had existed for countless years, finally couldn't hold on any longer. In the landslide and ground crack, the entire mountain began to collapse downward. A series of huge cracks appeared and quickly spread outward, the narrowest part of which was 1 meter wide. Most of the 9 giant dragon corpses fell under this crack, which just divided the entire Yuhuangding into 2 halves. After Tang Ge came back to his senses, looking at the scene in front of him again, he suddenly felt that the battles between those titled Douluo and the Douluo Continent were completely child's play. Immediately he looked down the crack again, and immediately saw dozens of 5-color altars scattered in various places. These altars seem to have existed for a long time, and they look very simple, with traces of time engraved on them. Among them, in the central area of the crack, there is even a super large altar, which is completely composed of huge stones of 5 colors. Even if the giant bronze coffin with a length of 20 meters fell on it, it did not affect it in the slightest. Could this be the altar that opened the ancient road to the starry sky? Tang Ge couldn't help thinking to himself. But at this time, while observing the altar, he did not forget to look for the son of Xianming in this world. Sure enough, it didn't take a while. In front of one of the cracks, Tang Ge saw dozens of figures. Then, as he remembered, first one of the female students accidentally fell through the crack, followed by the others. After these people fell under the crack, they just fell on the super large 5-color altar. Suddenly, the 5-color altar seemed to be touched somewhere, and 5-color halos shot out directly. The last ancient Taiji diagram slowly appeared, the yin and yang eyes in it were separated towards the 2 sides, revealing a bright and mysterious ancient road in the starry sky behind at the same time. The corpses of the 9 giant dragons that sank on the top of Mount Tai also suddenly trembled violently. Even the huge bronze coffin began to shake, and the tightly closed coffin lid slowly slid to one side, accompanied by the vibration of the void. A terrifying suction force was released from it immediately. Feeling the suction force, Tang Ge understood that this giant bronze coffin was about to leave. So he didn't hesitate any longer, and directly approached the giant bronze coffin at an extremely fast speed, and then burrowed into it along with the suction force. At the same time, the dozens of figures that had fallen on the 5-color altar and another figure in the distance were also swept by a black light and instantly pulled into the huge bronze coffin boom. Accompanied by a dull and loud noise, the coffin lid that had just opened a gap was closed again. Immediately, the 9 mountain-like dragon corpses flew into the air and, pulling the huge bronze coffin, flew directly into the ancient starry sky road behind the Tai Chi picture above the 5-color altar, and gradually disappeared. Kowloon pulled the coffin and disappeared. The 5-color altar under the crack also shot up into the sky with the 5 rays of light, and then shattered, turned into ashes and disappeared with the wind. The Tai Chi diagram then closed and dissipated in midair. The huge bronze coffin was pitch black, almost invisible, and there was an icy chill. Tang Ge, who came in first, was not found because he hid directly in the corner. After a while, bursts of crying and disparate conversations sounded in the coffin. "Woo, I want to go home, let me out, what to do? What to do? Are we in that giant coffin now, where's it going to take us, Mom, I don't want to die." However, there are some students who behaved fairly calmly, trying to contact the outside world with their mobile phones while speaking to comfort the crying students. But to their disappointment, there was no signal on the mobile phone, let alone go to the outside world for help. But fortunately, because the bright light from the mobile phone screen dispelled the darkness nearby, many flustered students began to calm down slowly. Then, following a female classmate's suggestion, a male classmate immediately stood up and helped to count the number of people in the coffin. After a while, the male student counted all the people present. Then, just like the plot that Tang Ge is familiar with, except for him who has not been discovered, the original 29 people suddenly became 30 people. This result directly frightened everyone present to turn pale, thinking they had encountered a ghost. But it turns out that these people were thinking too much. Because the extra number 30 people are also their classmate Panbo, a lucky one who unexpectedly appeared on the top of Mount Tai after missing the class reunion. Coupled with Yi Fan's testimony, other people believed what Pangbo said. In the pitch-black copper coffin, Tang Ge's vision was not greatly affected while hiding in the corner. He looked at the thin figure not far away, and couldn't help revealing a gleam in his eyes. Is this the future Yi Xiandi, who's where, as a result, Yi Fan, who was talking to Pangbo, seemed to notice something, and suddenly looked at Tang Ge's hiding place. Then he frowned even more and drank. For a while, other people who had just relaxed became tense again. Some even ignored the difference between men and women, and hugged each other directly, trembling. However, there were still some brave people who immediately turned on the light of their mobile phones when they heard Yi Fan's shout, and pointed them in the direction Yi Fan was looking at. In an instant, the darkness around was dispelled, and Tang Ge, who had been hiding in the corner, was finally revealed in front of everyone. Huh? There's a shadow. When they saw the shadow falling from Tang Ge's body on the ground, the people present could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Then there was a strange look in their eyes. This person doesn't seem very old, does he? Just as he was thinking, Yi Fan, who had just discovered Tang Ge's figure, frowned, looked at this strange boy who was even weirder than Pangbo, and asked, "What's your name? How old is this year?" Tang Ge also didn't expect Yi Fan to be so sensitive. It was as if he was watching the other party secretly, but he was discovered. For a moment, while feeling helpless in his heart, he secretly reminded himself that this place is no longer the Douluo Continent, and he should be more careful in everything. Thinking of this, Tang Ge shrank back into the corner pretending to be very scared, and said in a low and trembling voice, My name is Tang Ge, and I'm only 13 years old this year. Ask for a monthly pass." End of this chapter. Chapter 222. You are only 13 years old? Liar, right? Hearing Tang Ge's words, the eyes of many people behind were full of suspicion. After all, from their point of view, this young man who had been sneaking around in the corner looked taller and stronger than them. If you can grow up like this at the age of 13, I'm afraid you have taken some hormones. However, Yi Fan, who was closest to Tang Ge, had no doubts, because he could see that the other party's face was still full of immaturity. Although he is tall, there is not even a single visible hair growing from his mouth. This shows that even if the other party is not 13 years old, the actual age will not be too different. For a moment, the vigilance in Yi Fan's heart suddenly dropped, and he couldn't help but let his voice be as gentle as possible. "Little friend, are you alone?" Hearing Yi Fan call himself little friend, Tang Ge twitched slightly. However, he still resisted the urge to scold others, and continued to pretend to be pitiful. I came to Mount Tai to play with my mother, but I arrived here in a blink of an eye. Woo! I want my mother, I want mom." As he said that, Tang Ge secretly pinched himself, forced a few tears out of his eyes, and cried heartbroken. The rest of the students who were already restless were also affected by Tang Ge's crying, and started to cry. All of a sudden, ghosts and wolves were howling in the already gloomy copper coffin. Seeing this, Yi Fan had a terrible headache. He glanced at Pangbo at the side, pointed to Tang Ge who was crying, and said, "Pangbo, go and comfort him, don't let him cry anymore, let me comfort you." "Yi Fan, are you joking?" Pangbo's eyes widened immediately, looking at Yi Fan as if he was looking at something. But at this moment, the originally stable bronze giant coffin seemed to hit something, and suddenly trembled violently. Everyone couldn't stand, staggered, and many people fell directly to the ground. The original crying stopped abruptly. Immediately afterwards, there was another violent impact on the giant bronze coffin, and even the few people who were standing at the end fell to the ground, rolling back and forth with the constantly shaking huge bronze coffin. I don't know how long it took before the huge bronze coffin that shook violently regained its calm. With a click sound, a gap was opened in the tightly closed coffin lid again, and a faint light suddenly shone in from outside. Bright, the lid of the coffin was opened. Could it be that the rescue team came? Quick! Go out and see. When the people who had just got up from the ground saw the light, they immediately cheered and rushed towards the light source, trying to escape from this terrifying space. Soon they all rushed out of the huge bronze coffin. But when they saw the drowsy and desolate sky and the red-brown land full of coldness and silence, everyone was stunned, with disbelief on their faces. Where is this, or is it on Mount Tai? Someone couldn't help but trembled. In the huge bronze coffin not far behind, Tang Ge did not come out, but stood at the exit of the huge coffin and looked out at the boundless desert covered with gravel. He knew that this place was no longer Mount Tai, but Mars far away in the starry sky. And because of his own cultivation, Tang Ge can more clearly feel that there is a faint force guarding the surroundings of this world. Otherwise, on Mars, how could they breathe and speak without any external facilities? And at this time, it wasn't just someone who suggested it, Everyone immediately decided to leave a huge 5-color altar that appeared again at their feet, and prepared to go far to investigate the situation. It's just that when he was leaving, Yifan suddenly turned his head to look at Tang Ge, who was still in the giant coffin, and asked, "Are you coming?" "No. I'm afraid I won't go. I'll just stay here and wait for you." Tang Ge shook his head and said with a look of fear. Hearing Tang Ge's refusal, Yifan always felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't remember it for a while, so he had no choice but to give up. He didn't force Tang Ge, and after telling the other party not to run around, he got off the altar with Pangbo and other students, and walked slowly forward. After a group of people, the figures of these people became more and more blurred. But Tang Ge still heard exclamations from a distance, which seemed to contain words such as Yinghao Shaoxin and Mars. He knew that these people would encounter the legendary Douluo temple next, and obtain all kinds of remaining Buddhist treasures from it, and then they would be attacked by the divine crocodile and flee back in panic. But Tang Ge didn't care about those Buddhist treasures. With a system in hand, as long as the shock value is enough, he can get a good harvest for 10 consecutive draws at random, so why bother to be contaminated with these Buddhist things with too much cause and effect? Not to mention, in Tang Ge's view, the real treasure is hidden in the huge bronze coffin. So when there was no one else outside, he directly withdrew his gaze, turned around and walked into the huge bronze coffin with only a faint light. The giant bronze coffin is very large, and it is no problem to accommodate 34 people. When Tang Ge walked to the central area of the giant coffin, what caught his eyes was a coffin within a coffin, the bottom of which seemed to be connected to the giant coffin outside. Even if the huge coffin was turned upside down, the coffin within the coffin did not fall from it. If other people were here, they would have been scared because the surroundings were too dark. If they saw this mortuary again, they would probably be scared away. But Tang Ge was not only not afraid, but also went straight to the mortuary. Looking at the simple and mysterious mortuary in front of him, he couldn't help showing a smile on his face, and muttered to himself, "Although I don't have Yifan's Bodhi seeds, I have a system." After the words fell, Tang Ge reached out and touched it without hesitation. At the moment when a feeling of coldness came, the system notification sound suddenly sounded in his mind. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have discovered the Cheyenne of the Great Dao. At the same time, accompanied by the system prompt, Tang Ge suddenly found that there were hundreds of indistinguishable quaint fonts in his mind. Then there were bursts of voices like Hongzhong Dalu. The way of heaven, what is lost is more than what is lacking. Stimulated by the bursts of Daoshan Cheyenne, Tang Ge sat cross-legged involuntarily, and the meteor tears hidden in his heart began to continuously release strong essence of life. Originally, his spirit power, which had already reached level 69, broke through to level, in an instant as he frantically absorbed the essence of life. Although Tang Ge couldn't break through to the soul sage because he didn't integrate the 7th soul ring. But his soul power is still improving rapidly, and before he knows it, his strength has already surpassed level 70, and he is getting closer and closer to level 80 same time. One after another information about the law of time also gushed out from the meteor tears and entered Tang Ge's mind, making him unconsciously begin to combine these information about the law of time with the secret wordsing. End of this chapter. Chapter 223. Is this the end? The time of cultivation is often the fastest. Tang Ge didn't expect that. He just listened to Dao Cheyenne, and when he woke up again, the huge bronze coffin had already been dragged away from Mars by 9 dragon corpses. Not only that, but just after he woke up, the entire huge bronze coffin was violently shaken, as if it had fallen from a high altitude to the ground again. Everyone was swayed and couldn't help hugging each other. However, as the ancient bronze carvings on the inner wall of the giant coffin bloomed with divine brilliance, a hazy light curtain was erected, and this unimaginable impact was immediately blocked. Immediately, the shaking bronze coffin slowly stabilized. At the same time, the originally tightly closed coffin lid also slid to one side, revealing a huge gap. The harsh light shone in directly from the outside. Is this the end? Seeing this scene, Tang Ge was a little dazed. Hasn't he had time to take a look at the beauty of the boundless starry sky? Just as he was thinking, someone suddenly patted him on the shoulder. "Little friend, are you awake?" Hearing the inquiry, Tang Ge looked with confused eyes, and immediately saw the burly Pangbo staring at him with strange eyes. Yifan's eyes on the side were also full of weirdness, and there was a faint hint of curiosity. Tang Ge glanced at himself, and asked doubtfully, "Is there something wrong with me?" "It's so wrong." We were frightened all the way, but you, little guy, are lucky to be able to sit and sleep all the way beside this mortuary coffin, and the screams can't wake you up. I, Pangbo, have never admired anyone in my life, but now you are one." Speaking of this, Pangbo felt a little unbelievable. Tang Ge felt a little embarrassed. He didn't fall asleep. It was obvious that he had accidentally overcultivated. At this time, Yifan suddenly asked, "Little friend, did you hear any sound when you were sitting next to this coffin? Does Dao Xianayan count?" Regarding Yifan's question, Tang Ge naturally understood what it meant. After all, other than him, the other party also heard it. But how could Tang Ge tell the truth, pretending to be very scared, and said, "Could it be that the corpse in this coffin is going to be a fake corpse?" With that said, he hurriedly got up and walked away from the mortuary coffin. Seeing this scene, Yifan knew that he was overthinking. Just at this time, because of the appearance of light, the other students had already rushed out of the huge bronze coffin. So Yifan could only suppress his psychological doubts, called Pangbo, and left the giant bronze coffin with Tang Ge. Outside the huge bronze coffin, when Tang Ge, Yifan, and Pangbo came out, what caught their eyes was an endless stretch of beautiful mountains. Vigorous old trees, strange rocks, thick old vines. The fields are full of fragrance to flowers. Compared with a lifeless Mars, this place is like a fairyland on Earth. Seeing this scene, everyone opened their arms involuntarily, with a look of intoxication on their faces. But soon, they were completely awakened by the huge roar caused by the 9 dragon corpses pulling the huge bronze coffin down the abyss. Coupled with the side of the rock, which is bigger than an airplane, flying off while grabbing a giant elephant the size of a house, those who are still alive suddenly understand. The mysterious place that is suspected to be an ancient forbidden land identified from the stone tablet in front of me looks like a fairyland, but it is more terrifying and dangerous than Mars. Then these people didn't dare to stay here anymore, and hurried towards the direction where the fairy palace faintly appeared in the distance. During this period, because Tang Ge knew the curse of the ancient forbidden land, he naturally stayed with Yifan and Pangbo all the time. Because he was young, Yifan and the two didn't think too much, and they took good care of him. It didn't take long, because of the hunger, everyone started looking for something to eat. But Pangbo, Yifan, and Tang Ge walked a little farther away, and soon separated from the others. "Look, there is a spring pool there." Suddenly, Pangbo let out a surprise, pointing forward. "Spring pond? Is it because of the divine spring?" Hearing Pangbo's words, Tang Ge's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly looked in the direction pointed by the other party. Then he saw a few tens of meters away in front of him, a few bucket-like old vines were surrounding an open space, and inside was a spring pond with a square meter. The clear water in the spring pool is gurgling, like a spring of nectar. Not only that, but beside the spring pond, there are 13 small trees more than half a meter high, which are luxuriantly branched. There is also a bright red fruit growing on the top of them, which is the size of a chicken egg. A gust of wind blew by, and suddenly there was a strong fragrance. How could Tang Ge hold back, and immediately said pleasantly, "Finally there is fruit to eat." After saying that, without waiting for Yifan and Pangbo to react, he quickly rushed over to pick a fruit and put it in his mouth. "Be careful, it's poisonous." Seeing Tang Ge's behavior, Yifan, who came back to his senses, quickly reminded him. But before he finished saying the word poison, the other party had already started to eat biji. Then, the aroma that wafted in the air became stronger. Pangbo couldn't help but swallowed hard with a gulu and said, "Isn't this little guy afraid of being poisoned to death? However, it smells delicious, it shouldn't be poisonous." Seeing Tang Ge eat one and pick another fruit, Yifan's stomach started to growl. Seeing that there were fewer and fewer fruits on the tree, the two of them finally stopped hesitating and rushed over and began to biji to eat the fruit. But after a while, the three of them ate up the 13 fruits in total. Tang Ge ate the most, 5 of them. Yifan and Pangbo each ate 4. Although the fruits were not big, after they ate them, they were full of strength, as if they could kill a cow with one punch. This made Yifan and Pangbo full of excitement, knowing that they must have eaten the legendary divine fruit. It's a pity that because they ate too fast, they forgot to leave a few for their classmates. Thinking of this, the two couldn't help looking at Tang Ge with resentful eyes. "Huh? What about people?" Pangbo didn't see it at first glance, but when he lowered his head and looked down again, he saw a figure lying beside the spring pool. This frightened him so much that he almost couldn't help but kicked at the opponent. In the end, It was Yifan who reacted quickly and quickly grabbed the frightened Pangbo. It's Tang Ge, huh? It's really this kid. After calming down, Pangbo took a closer look and immediately recognized that the figure lying on the edge of the spring was Tang Ge, who had suddenly disappeared. Moreover, he also saw that the little guy was drinking the water in the spring pool non-stop, and the sound of gurgling seemed to be drinking some fairy wine. For a moment, Pangbo couldn't help but wonder, is it so delicious? Try it, and then you'll know. Yifan seemed to have thought of something, his eyes lit up, and then he bent down beside the spring pool and began to drink. Immediately, Pangbo also joined them. For a moment, the three figures were squatting beside the spring pool together, making gulu and gulu sounds, which looked really strange. End of this chapter. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224 Youth is hardest. Time is easy to grow old. There are 9 forbidden areas in the world of Shrouding the Sky, each of which has a divine spring. The ancient Forbidden Land is no exception. Tang Ge took the risk to come here with great difficulty. Now that he has encountered the Shenquan, how could he easily miss it? And if he wasn't afraid of alarming that person, he would have eaten all the 13 divine fruits just now, and would not have left 2 for Yifan and Pangbo. However, although you can't eat all the divine fruits, you can always drink the divine spring in the spring pool. So after Tang Ge ate the divine fruit, feeling the majestic vitality filling his body, he laid down by the spring pool and quickly swallowed the spring water without caring about digestion. That's right, it is to devour. He seemed to be drinking, but in fact he was involuntarily running the furnace of hell. A steady stream of spring water entered his body along his mouth, and then was sucked into the furnace of hell. If it weren't for the Wuhan Mountain River Shiji map not being activated, Tang Ge really wanted to move this entire spring pool into the Mountain River Shiji map. But he also knows that this kind of thing can only be thought about. If he really dared to do this, even if the future Emperor Yiyan was by his side, Tang Ge might not be able to provoke that ruthless person. So after devouring it for a while, Tang Ge finally stopped the hell furnace when he felt that the Shenquan had a faint downward trend. He burped involuntarily, patted his bulging stomach, and stood up from the ground with a satisfied face. But as soon as he stood up, Tang Ge found that Pangbo and Yifan were looking at him with strange eyes. Their handsome faces blushed, and they explained in embarrassment. I was so thirsty, so I accidentally drank a little more. Brother, did you just drink a little more? Hearing Tang Ge's words, the two were speechless for a while. Pangbo praised even more. I used to only admire you for being so smart and able to sleep beside the coffin. Now I have one more thing to admire about you. I'm afraid this stomach can hold a boat. Tang Ge was so shy that he lowered his head. Yifan couldn't stand it anymore, so he patted Pangbo. Okay, don't bully Tang Ge. Although the fruit is gone, the spring water seems to be extraordinary. Let's make more decorations for Yi and Zhang Xiling to bring back. As he said that, he had already emptied all the bottles of mineral water from his bag, and began to fill up the spring water in the spring pool. Pangbo also pretended to be. After both of them filled the mineral water bottles, they left here with Tang Ge and walked towards the more than 10 faintly visible figures in the distance. What happened next was bloody. Exactly as Tang Ge understood, even though they came to this new world after a hard journey, the conflict between Yifan and his classmates finally broke out again. In this regard, Tang Ge is completely an outsider and has no intention of intervening. What's more, following along in obscurity, he really didn't expect that all the classmates in the same class left their hometown and came to a new world full of unknowns and dangers. As a result, these people didn't want to work together to support each other to survive, but instead began to intrigue and frame each other. Especially Li Changqing, Liu Zhiyan, and Wang Yan, who were masters of death, frequently provoked Yifan and Pangbo in the end. The wish of the three of them was fulfilled. Yifan, who was completely irritated, finally put away the last bit of kindness in his heart, and he who had eaten the divine fruit was completely different from before, and he was simply infinitely powerful. After a lot of fighting, Liu Zhiyan was successfully captured, tied up by Yifan and thrown outside the tiger's den. Li Changqing and Wang Yan also stayed to accompany him. After everyone left, with the ear-splitting sound of the tiger roaring, Tang Ge knew that the three of them had turned into food and entered the tiger's stomach. This made him feel a lot better. It's a pity that this place is not on Douluo World after all, otherwise Tang Ge couldn't help but slap the three of them to death. Why would it be so troublesome? After that, things are very simple. Because the forbidden area is too large, there are mountains everywhere. Yifan and his party can only keep walking towards the fairy palace in the distance before they have no direction. Although they encountered many dangers during the period, they all managed to avoid them. However, the invisible crisis has come unknowingly and quietly. Just when Yifan and his group avoided the weird black lake and climbed up a low mountain, everyone suddenly felt their whole bodies start to heat up. And this kind of heat became more and more serious, and finally became scalding directly, and the skin all over the body was burned and turned red. What's wrong with me? I feel so hot all over. No. It's too hot. Is there any water? I want to drink water. Accompanied by the screams of panic, one of the girls finally couldn't bear the severe pain in her body, and fell to the ground screaming and rolling over. And her fall was like a fuse, and other students around her also fell to the ground one after another. Struggling, crying, screaming, rolling. Because of the burning pain on their bodies, these students couldn't help screaming in despair, and the tears that kept pouring out blurred their eyes. Even Yifan and Pang Bo were among them. But after a while, they all passed out from the pain, and a layer of blood began to swirl around their bodies, like a bloody flame burning. In the end, Tang Ge was the only one who was still awake. But his situation is not very good, because there is an invisible force that is constantly stripping away the vitality in his body, as if it wants to suck him dry. In order to resist this devouring force, Tang Ge could only sit cross-legged and continuously run the hell furnace to refine the divine spring in it. Coupled with the 5 divine fruits that had been swallowed before and the meteor tears in his heart, the surging vitality in his body finally maintained a balance with the devouring power. In this way, time passed slowly. I don't know how long it took before the strange phagocytosis slowly receded, and Tang Ge finally breathed a sigh of relief after realizing that he hadn't gotten older or smaller. He opened his eyes, wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and couldn't help but feel lingering fear. This forbidden place is really scary, of course. The forbidden area is terrifying, but after experiencing the situation just now, Tang Ge can clearly feel that the vitality in himself has become more vigorous. Moreover, there is still a large amount of life force stored, as long as he practices the shrouding sky technique. This life force will turn into strength to help him open up the sea of suffering. After collecting his thoughts, Tang Ge stopped thinking about it, and immediately got up and stood up. And when he glanced around, there were more than a dozen bodies lying on the ground, all of Yifan's classmates who had passed out just now. But now these students who were originally youthful and sunny, all of them have gray hair, wrinkled skin, and are extremely old. 26. A 7-year-old youth turns into a 780-year-old man in an instant. Tang Ge sighed slightly, and 8 characters involuntarily appeared in his mind. Youth is hard to stay. The years are easy to grow old. End of this chapter. Period. Chapter 225. 2 ancient holy bodies? But not all of them have become 80-year-old men. Among them, Liu Yi and Zhang Xiling drank the water from the divine spring. Although the vitality in it was not as good as the divine fruit, it still gave them a little capital to resist the curse. So when the other students woke up and found themselves in despair and pain after becoming old men, Liu Yi and Zhang Xiling, who had only become middle-aged, felt much better. After all, compared with other classmates in their 70s and 80s, their age is no longer a tragedy. Immediately, Yifan and Pang Bo, who turned into 11 or 12-year-old brats as if they were wearing costumes, also hurried up from the foot of the mountain. Then they were also stunned by the scene before them. But when they saw Tang Ge, who stood out from the crowd, the two were taken aback for a moment, and then ran over in surprise. "Little guy, are you okay?" When he came to Tang Ge's side, Pang Bo couldn't help being surprised. Tang Ge shook his head suspiciously. "Just like you, I suddenly fell into coma due to heat, and when I woke up again, I was still like this, and I didn't become like them." Having said that, he still showed a look of lingering fear. But soon, when he looked at Pang Bo, who was much lower than himself, Tang Ge finally couldn't help but said, "Besides, I look older than you now, shouldn't I call you little guys?" Feeling Tang Ge's serious eyes, Pang Bo was suddenly extremely embarrassed. To be honest, he now feels ashamed to face people. A young and promising young man in his 20s has turned into a child of 11 or 12 years old. This is completely unreasonable. Fortunately, Pang Bo has a thick skin, and immediately said to Tang Ge, "What kind of little guy is not a little guy? Since we are the same age, let's call them peers. I don't take advantage of you either, just call me Brother Pang. By the way, next to you is Brother Yi, he has become a kid like me." Yi Fan lay innocently on the gun, and couldn't help giving Pang Bo a blank look. But when he looked at Liu Yi and Zhang Xiling, who had only become middle-aged not far away, he suddenly thought of the fruits he ate and the spring water he drank. Is it because of this? For a moment, Yi Fan was very happy in his heart. At this time, the other older students also saw Yi Fan, Pang Bo, and Tang Ge, and immediately thought that the three had eaten something good, and blamed them for not bringing it out. But unfortunately, after experiencing what happened to Li Changqing and the three of them, Yi Fan had already put away the kindness in his heart, and did not sympathize with these former classmates at all. Knowing that there is nothing they can do about Yi Fan, the aged classmates can only pin their hopes on the fairy palace in the distance. But unfortunately, the Asgard is like a mirage, no matter how hard they try, they can't get close, and finally they are attacked by giant beasts. If it wasn't for a mysterious fairy flying in from the sky and beheading the giant beast with a single sword, these people would probably become the rations of the giant beast, not to mention finding the immortal palace. Later, after the fairy's explanation, they finally realized that the mysterious place they stayed in before was actually a forbidden place of death in this world. Moreover, the news that practice can restore youth also rekindled hope for Zhou Yi and others who had become old men. It's just that from the beginning to the end, the eyes of the mysterious fairy stayed on Yi Fan, Pang Bo and Tang Ge, and there was a strange light in a pair of beautiful eyes. Maybe Yi Fan and Pang Bo didn't understand the meaning of this look, but Tang Ge knew that the three of them who took the red magic fruit were exactly like human-shaped fairy medicine, and in the eyes of some people, they were reusable resources. But if you know it, you know it, but Tang Ge didn't have the time to panic and say it out. After all, he still has to rely on the woman in front of him to obtain his first stage of cultivation method. Just like that, the mysterious fairy who suddenly appeared didn't stay outside the ancient forbidden land for too long, and directly used the rainbow light to wrap everyone around and go away through the air. In the hall of a small town, when Yi Fan and his group of more than a dozen people were put down again, Wei Wei, the mysterious fairy who had already spoken her name, had already put away the rainbow light on her body. Seeing Wei Wei's return, several old men who were sitting immediately stood up one after another. When Wei Wei told the story of Yi Fan and the others, their faces suddenly showed disbelief. They never expected that all these people in front of them would come out of the ancient forbidden land alive. Especially when Yi Fan, Tang Ge and Pang Bo were told about the consumption of shangguo by these old people, they were even more shocked and stared. As a result, Tang Ge found that his shock value began to increase rapidly again. And it's still the kind of speed that soars into the sky. For a moment he couldn't help but wonder, Zishan is indeed Zishan, the shock of just a few old people can make him harvest so much shock value. It's just a pity that Tang Ge can only passively obtain the shock value due to his own strength limitations. Next, perhaps it was because the noise of Wei Wei bringing people back was too loud, and several people from the paradise turned into rainbow lights and rushed over. After knowing the identities of Yi Fan and the others who came out of the barren and forbidden land, in order to fight for these good seedlings who have successfully opened up the sea of suffering, they, the elders of the paradise, directly took action. Yi Fan and the others who stayed outside the hall all came from the world of non-cultivation. Except for the 9 giant dragon corpses and the huge bronze coffin, they had never seen such a battle before. For a moment, they looked at the scene of divine rainbows and thunder flashing in the sky between waving palms, and they were stunned. After a while, the war ended. As the winning side this time, the elders of Lingsu Cave Heaven finally got a chance to choose 3 places after a lot of fighting. In this regard, they naturally chose the youngest Yi Fan, Tang Ge and Pang Bo without hesitation. There is nothing wrong with Pang Bo's inspection. But when it was Yi Fan and Tang Ge's turn, the expressions of the elders in Lingsu Cave suddenly changed, with a look of surprise and uncertainty in their eyes. Because they discovered that the sea of bitterness of these 2 little guys is as hard as iron, and it is impossible to successfully develop it. The others were also extremely surprised when they found out. And they all started to investigate. At the end, an elder named Myun in Yuding Cave seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly said in a deep and complicated voice, "If I'm not mistaken, the physique of these 2 little guys should be the legendary unrivaled holy body, but unfortunately, This holy body belongs to the ancient times. The elders of the Lingsu cave who had just heard about the unrivaled Eucharist were about to protect Tang Ge and Yifang closely. As a result, following Ma Yun's words before the ancient times, their actions suddenly froze, and their expressions became unnatural. The elders of the other caves and blessed lands also had incredulous expressions on their faces. Desolate Eucharist? And as soon as they appeared, there were two? Looking at Tang Ge and Yifan who looked immature, these people suddenly didn't know whether to be lucky or disappointed when they came back to their senses, and their expressions became extremely complicated. Ask for a monthly pass. End of this chapter. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.